It's been 9 months since we were last racing with the Michelin Le Mans Cup, an enforced break quite clearly because of COVID-19, but finally we can say it is race day in ACO rules type racing. The European Le Mans Series opening round to look forward to tomorrow, but before that the hors d'oeuvre is the 2 hours of the Michelin Le Mans Cup, starting in about 19 minutes time. A cracking field of cars, 25 of them all being well on the grid, a mixture of LMP3 and GT3 cars. We'll take you through the runners and riders just as soon as we can. But first, let's hear from Hayley Edmonds, who's got news for us down close to the start of the race.
I'm down here in the paddock, and as you can see, there's been a strict hygiene protocol implemented. So everyone has to wear masks, me included. And there's, of course, social distances, of course, encouraged where that can be applied. Obviously, in this situation, it's quite particular, but everyone is covered, everyone's wearing masks, social distancing where possible. And as you can just see behind me, the stands, unfortunately, are absolutely empty because this event, or the whole, and the ELMS will be taking place behind closed doors. But that doesn't change anything on the track. We're going to be seeing some fantastic racing, and we can't wait for it to get underway here for the Michelin Le Mans Cup.
Yeah, and of course through recent seasons the ELMS and Michelin Le Mans Cup have prided itself on the fact that it's free entry for the majority of those race meetings, Le Mans being the exception. But yes, we've had big families often coming down to experience motorsport in a cracking part of the world, the south of France. This meeting sitting exactly as it did when the first calendar was released at the start of the year. This was set to be round 3. And what a prime time to come to Castellet to witness motorsport firsthand, right in the sweet spot of the holiday season. Sadly, that cannot take place. The same is going to be the case, I'm sure, for the rest of the rounds this year. And then maybe things can be reviewed over the winter period ahead of season 2021. A lot of water to go under the bridge until we reach that point, of course. The cars have been released from the pit lane to take up their dummy positions on the grid. It will be a rolling start ahead of the first 2-hour race of the year. So welcome along. If you had planned to be here, sorry that can't happen, but hopefully the TV can provide a sort of substitute to the action. We will bring it all to you thick and fast and as the stories unfold. My name's Johnny Palmer, delighted to be joined by Bruce Jones for the season for Michelin Le Mans Cup and ELMS, and Hayley Edmonds, as we already know, is patrolling the pit lane for us and interviewing drivers where it is socially appropriate to be doing so at distance, and quite a bit of technology being utilised actually with smart speakers and microphones on stands to be able to do that safely. So Bruce, exciting qualifying earlier on today, and a great field of cars. Obviously one heck of a lot of logistics even to get these team members and the vehicles on site and on time.
One really has to be impressed just simply by the logistics of getting them here. All these cars, 25 cars in this race, but 8 and 17 across the GTE and LMP3 classes. But it's also, you look around the paddock, you've got 36 cars going out to play in the European Le Mans Series. You have a good dozen cars going out in the new Ligier Series. 2 different classes.
We are under 1 minute to close the pit lane. We are under 1 minute to close the pit lane.
So getting right down towards the start of the race. No, just going back on the point of the logistics, it's phenomenal because it is extra difficult for everyone concerned, but they've had a good handful of days of testing here, quick-fire qualifying, and now, as you say, just getting very close to the start of the race. But hats off to everyone.
Yes, because of course originally the opening round was due to be in Barcelona, and there was a full prologue planned for the Spanish opening race. That's been pushed back now to the end of August, and a kind of Plan B version of the prologue had to be hastily arranged. But what it has meant is that everyone's been on site since about Sunday night actually, and an excuse to spend the best part of a week in the south of France. We're about an hour's drive away from Marseille.
Next car that crosses the line. Checkered flag on the next car that crosses the line. Pit exit is closed. I do invite all cars on track to quickly come to the pits to avoid any troubles or loss of time.
We are going to hear plenty of Eduardo Freitas. I believe he's pretty much got an open microphone and can shut Bruce and I up very quickly indeed with various messages. Obviously, once we get racing, those messages will die down a little bit. Well, that's the plan anyway, assuming nothing too erratic happens on the opening lap. It's always a bit of a squeeze to get a full field of cars through turns 1 and 2, and then 3, 4 and 5 a real bottleneck as well, particularly because the grid, how it's arranged here, if you've got a fast GT3 car and you happen to be faster than 1 or 2 LMP3s, there's no split in the grid. So what we've got is actually the number 20 grain market car, a Mark Crader, wedged right back in what would effectively be the 7th place of the GT3 field. He's promised a busy start to the race, therefore. But Rino Mastronardi for Iron Lynx, a new team from Italy, made up quite a bit from AF Corsa personnel, though. They received quite a bit of backing and technical guidance from the well-known Amato Ferrari squad. But Iron Lynx are a new name, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they can achieve throughout the course of the season. It started very well. Giacomo Piccini very happy indeed with his teammate Rino Mastronardi's performance.
We do invite all cars on track to quickly come into the pits. We do invite all cars on track to quickly come into the pits. Otherwise you may find that you have no time to change tires and refuel. We do invite all cars to quickly come into the pits. Otherwise you may find yourselves short of time to refuel.
And I need to cut across Eduardo Freitas here, because we're going to hear from Laurence Hoare now in the pit lane.
It was your teammate Jean Gloria who managed to clinch the pole position. However, it was an extremely tense qualifier because the car stopped about a minute towards the end. What happened?
As far as I know, we had a broken drive shaft, but the team managed to get the car fixed in time, so now we're all good.
And we were just discussing that in free practice you weren't getting the times down, but you really managed to pull it out the bag for the qualifier. I mean, how do you feel to be in pole position here?
It's a really good feeling because after the test days we have been nowhere, at least for us, so it's really good to see that we are again in the position to fight for the win.
And of course you're doing both ELMS and Michelin Le Mans Cup.
Yeah, it's the first time I do them both. It's also the first time for me in ELMS. I did P2 there in the qualifying, so it was also not too bad. I think we're also in a position to fight there.
And the fight is on. Thank you very much, Laurent.
Thank you.
Laurent Hoare, a co-champion last year in LMP3 with Francois Kerman, and he's joining up with Jean Gloria, who is back again after a 3-year absence from Michelin Le Mans Cup. We saw him in the ELMS in 2018, but he was a champion in LMC in 2017. So 2 champions from different years combining in a championship-winning squad. Be a brave person to bet against DKR Engineering from getting another title, because that driving lineup looks very, very strong, Bruce.
It must be said, Johnny, they're top, but only by a very small margin. 43 thousandths of a second. Cool Racing's Nicolas Molini and the young racer Edward Cowhap. But then the next car is 8/10 of a second further back. But again, qualifying super, super quick fire. It seemed much closer than that, but those 2 cars pulled clear. Can they do that across the course of a 2-hour race remains to be seen. But in terms of pure form at the moment, and the cars, don't forget, have had a lot of running here at Paul Ricard. It's not like they've all been short of running and, the team hit the ground running. But just looking really, really strong. But let's go down and hear from Giacomo Piccini, who's down, ready to race the Iron Lynx Ferrari with Haley.
So I'm joined by Giacomo Piccini, who will be starting in pole position here at the GT3 category in Michelin Le Mans Cup. Great performance by Rino during the qualifying. It means you'll actually be starting the race in pole position.
Yeah, it's fantastic. First of all, it's fantastic to be back on track after such a difficult period. And Rino did an amazing job. The team gave us a fantastic car, so I'm sure we have very good possibility for the race.
So Giacomo, just how does it feel to be back into a car after such a long time?
It's for sure fantastic. I mean, we missed a lot racing, we missed a lot all of you, all the crew, and of course to be here together with our own team is a fantastic feeling, and it's very special.
So Iron Lynx are definitely going to be a strong squad throughout the course of the season. They've started so well, and the 488 GT3 appears, at least at this weekend, at Paul Ricard to be the car to have. Although the TFT Porsche, qualified by Niki Leutwiler, is there in third position. Mercedes, which had to have quite a lot of repair work done on it a Friday night into Saturday morning, could be a bit of a dark horse sitting there in sixth position. Patrice Lafargue qualified the EDEX Sport Car, and they deliberately cycled through both drivers because they were so short of practice time from the earlier sessions after that car was damaged. So Eric Maris started the 15-minute session and they switched to Patrice Lafargue. Quick times weren't really the priority, Bruce.
No, it was a case of expediency. When you're so short on track time, you want to make sure that both of your drivers are comfortable in the car, and Patrice, team owner, will be the one starting the race. He was the one that got out last.
I'm going to open the pit exit for the mechanics at 21:20 in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. LMP3s go on track. LMP3s go on track.
Now the green flag will be waved at the end of the pit lane to release that part of the grid. We're talking first position down to 16th, and then the grain market car that will slot into, well, 17th position in class, but actually 23rd on the grid. And all the personnel, again socially distanced, are preparing themselves on the dummy grid to welcome these cars. We're still about 8 minutes away from scheduled start time. Do need to squeeze in a rolling lap though as well, so it could be pretty tight actually to get the cars away for the scheduled 4:30 start. A very interesting press release appeared on my desk not half an hour or so ago, pertaining to the fact that the engine, which is brand new for 2020 in the LMP3s.
Please ask your mechanics on the grid to be standing in line with the center of the car so that the cars are properly parked.
Nissan engine, 5.5 litre, so brand new lump in the middle of these LMP3s, is rather thirsty, and slightly more thirsty than Orica had anticipated. They prepare the Nissan power plant. It's a near production crate engine, but then made sure that they are of all the exact specification and the same brake horsepower, 455 brake horsepower I think it is now, an increase of 35 in the winter period. However, after free practice, concerns were raised that actually it may not be able to do the distance.
Pit lane closed for LMP3 cars, on standby for the GTs. GT cars may head to pit exit. GT cars may go to pit exit.
May not be able to do the distance on one stop. Now that was the intention, to get the car in, driver changed, and then send the car back out again.
Cars, please do not take too long to get to the grid. Do not forget that we have limited the amount of time you have. LMP3 cars, please do not take too long to get to the grid.
So what we're going to have is the mandatory pit stop, and you need to come in the pit lane for 2.5 minutes for that, from pit stop in to pit stop out.
Pit lane open for GT cars. Pit lane open for GT cars.
And I'm not sure whether this gap's going to be large enough to explain this fully, but they're going to have to stop again to ensure that the cars get to the end of the race. Sounds like a pretty major hiccup from Orica, and the press release was pretty firm from the ACO to suggest that they expressly ask Orica to solve this fuel consumption problem without any delay in time for the next round at Spa-Francorchamps. It's similar to the situation we've had at the Road to Le Mans event in recent years, whereby that race is 55 minutes rather than 60, because that track is 80% full throttle. You burn through the fuel like nothing else. Here, it's Orica's backyard, so somebody's made a miscalculation, and it's a pretty public one, and therefore the teams will have to come in to top up the fuel, maybe for a splash and dash, which could make the end of the race pretty interesting, Bruce.
It certainly could. We've mentioned before, there's a relatively new pit entrance, which makes the pit lane longer from pit in to pit out. I just wonder how marginal that decision is.
Pit lane is now closed for GT cars. Pit lane is now closed.
Is it like half a lap?
Pit lane will open after the first racing lap.
Could you manage it if you're very soft-shoed and, just trail brake into one of the two corners, lift and coast into senior maybe? It really depends how close to the wire you want to run it.
Or could there be a safety car period that allows them to back off the fuel, and then suddenly that really would be taking it right to the sharp end of the event. So we will see. I mean, it is suck it and see what happens in this opening round with this.
We kindly ask and remind all teams in the pit lane, the use of the mask is mandatory. The use of the mask is mandatory. We are doing an event under COVID regulations.
However, I will remind everyone that according to bulletin number 3, this is an enforcement of an additional and mandatory pit stop. So you won't be able to get around it. You're going to have to come in. And therefore, well, just motor on as fast as you can, knowing that they're going to have to make another stop. But it won't be you won't have to adhere to a pit stop time, not like the mandatory stop, if you know what I mean. That's the 2.5 minute one. The second one can be as quick as you like.
Does it mean the very fastest of the GT3 runners might be able to get ahead of some of the tail-end LMP3 cars? Well, we will see. We will find out. We've got 2 hours of racing ahead of us, but 2 pit stops, just to reiterate that, 2 pit stops rather than 1 for the 17 cars running in the top class, the LMP3 class. Wow, a little twist.
Indeed.
But it must be rectified by the next round, August the 8th, Spa-Francorchamps. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so they haven't got a great deal of time, Orica, to sort that problem, and it was obviously a big surprise this weekend. But yeah, it only applies to the prototypes. So where will the highest GT car finish, I wonder? Jean Glorieux really carrying on where he left off in 2017, though. A real master when it comes to bronze rated drivers, but he's got competition because Nicola Morlini, had he had the rest of the session, which was 1 minute and 9 seconds left on the clock, might have even been able to squeeze out an extra lap from that, but there were red flags because Jean Glorieux's car broke down. We've subsequently found out from his teammate Laurence Heur that it was a broken drive shaft. That was the smoke coming from the back of the car. Red flags were shown in order to recover the Duqueine, and we could go no further with just over 1 minute left on the clock. Couldn't restart the session because it takes 2 minutes to get a car out of the pit lane and round to start a fast lap. 1 minute board now being shown. We are going to be a little bit late according to the start time, but it's really just a few seconds, and any minute now the cars then will be waved down towards turns 1 and 2. 37 hasn't made it out, and that is the car due to be second on the grid, Nicola Morlini. So singing Morlini's praises after he performed so well in the qualifying, but there's going to be an absentee on the outside of the front row, and Jean Glorieux, his route into turns 1 and 2 made an awful lot more easy now.
Certainly is, and I was just about to talk about Morlini's teammate, Edward Cauhab, only 17 at the moment, and really these 2 cars clear of the rest by 0.8 of a second, yet 43 thousandths between the 2 cars in the front row, but one of them isn't there. So for Nicola Morlini, who's due to start the 37 from Cool Racing, that is a massive, massive setback. So we haven't got 1, but 2 cars are going to be coming through the GT3 class from the back of the field, and one of which is the second fastest car. And had it not been for the session being yellow flagged and then eventually red flagged with a minute or so to go, it would have been the car surely on pole position.
Off we go, onto the formation lap. This will be a couple of minutes ahead of our 4:30 start. And another car and driver to look out for will be Daniel Kylvitz. Let's take you through the full grid though, because it's everybody pretty much bronze rated drivers, including Glorieux and Morlini from the front row. But Kylvitz for Rinaldi Racing is gold and could really romp away from everybody else in the race. It's Rory Penttinen to start the Graf car from the second row, ahead of Maurice Smith and Daniel Schneider for Cool Racing and United Autosports respectively. Then it's Nielsen Racing from 7th position, Tony Wells installed. Eric de Donker for Motorsport 98 starts alongside, and the 5th row will be Mikkel Jensen for CD Sport, another driver to watch there, and Christoph Cresp. Christoph Cresp driving for the MV2S Racing squad, new for 2020. Racing experience in Rinaldi Racing, Steve Parrow there from the 6th row. Next up, Nielsen Racing and Rob Hodes, as still the work continues down at Cool Racing to get the 37 car into the race. Mullner Motorsports, Tom Cloet, we didn't see in qualifying until very, very late on. John Schauerman, the American, starts from the 8th row for United Autosports. Kessel Racing and Iron Lynx, we're now into the GT3 field, with pole position being set by Rino Mastronardi earlier on today. Another Kessel Racing Ferrari of Murad Sultanov alongside Nicky Leutwiler's Mercedes. EDEX Sports Mercedes rather, the other car being a Porsche from TFT. Iron Lynx and Claudio Schiavone will start from 22nd position. John Hartshorn for Kessel in the 50 car. Mark Crader in the slightly away from the pack LMP3 car. He could be one to watch as well, working his way through GT cars. And it's Deborah Meyer at the back of the order, 25th on the grid in the second of the Iron Lynx Ferrari 488. Frustratingly, Cool Racing's LMP3 car, which was qualified in second position, will have to start from the pit lane, and it remains to be seen whether that's a full lap down as well. That has happened in the past in the ELMS. You've got to wait for everybody to pass you twice before you can tack on the back. Hopefully it is though still on the lead lap for Nicola Molini.
Well, it was actually quite a scramble for that car to be got ready to go to pit exit there. It's now sitting, waiting for whatever signal it will be given, but the team, Cool Racing, really having to fight the fight to get that car there. It's only been at a standstill for about a dozen seconds. The rest of the field, though, is now going through really between turns 11 and 12. Last few cars just going through turn 8. That's how the field is bunched up behind the Audi pace car on this, the formation lap. All the cars heading towards the grid, with the exception of the car that should be starting from the outside of the front row. Cool Racing number 37, Nicola Molini, could have been on pole position, was sort of thwarted in that, and now he's been thwarted before the race has got underway. How cruel is that?
And the Ferraris leading the GTs, eager to get going here. Rino Mastronardi and Michel Broniszewski, door handle to door handle. It's almost a race to the start line before they're given the order to properly get going. And it's tricky through turns 1 and 2. There's really only one racing line through there, and a real bottleneck down towards turns 3, 4 and 5. 1 or 2 back in the pack wanting to get going well before the red lights have been extinguished. It is a long wait here and a long hole before you get to the start line, which is about 100 metres further up the road from the finish line. Now they all fan out. We're starting then a brand new season finally for the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and a cracking getaway as predicted for Daniel Kylvitz, who will lead surely for the first time into turn 1. Right at the inside he goes in the Rinaldi racing car, that multicoloured yellow and green machine. The DKR engineering car from pole position slips back to second place, and as usual we always get this message: race start under investigation. That's because Eduardo Freitas and his team have to make sure that they were all in the right order as they cross the start line. So far so good, Bruce Jones. As I say that, there is one spinner back in the pack at turn number 3, arriving backwards at turn 3, never ideal.
Not good, but for Daniel Kylvitz, Rinaldi Racing, new to prototype racing, let's hope they didn't trigger. It's, as you say, it's a standard investigation of the start, but a brilliant start from the German. He's about 4 or 5 car lengths clear. And Jean Gloria just did not have heat on the front tyres. Really struggled turning on between turns 1 and 2, and then he got down to turn number 5, and the front end washed out again. And that means he's probably going to lose that second position. No, second position he's safe. Third and fourth very close together. Tony Wells really pressing on to see if he can gain position there.
Look, Rory Penttinen is challenging him all the way. It is Tony Wells in the number 7, Penttinen in the Graf car, running 4th place as they work their way around the right-hander, and not very far away Maurice Smith as well in the Cool Racing car with the green door mirrors, car number 69.
Well, you said before that you thought the rules would stipulate that if you start from the pit lane you have to wait for the whole field to come through with 1 lap completed. That is indeed the case, because 37 Nicola Molini sitting there trying to remain calm when he's really very hot under the collar. So could have been on the front row, could have been challenging for the lead. He didn't get the chance. Daniel Kylvitz did, and he most certainly has made it stick.
I think the concern there when it comes to the regulations is if there is a turn 1 shunt, the last thing you want to be doing is releasing a car from the pit lane straight into the melee. So you allow everyone to get a bit more strung out. It's also an extra penalty, of course, for having to start from the pit lane. Double whammy, particularly for Molini, who did such a good job earlier on today at about lunchtime in that short, sharp 15-minute session. Molini, I always tell from the body language of the car sitting there, it looks so sorry for itself, having to wait then for Deborah Meyer, stone last, who goes across the line. She's not stone last anymore because Nicola Molini is about to be waved into the race any time now. Nico, finally he gets the signal, and it's just a question now of making sure they get a finish and hope for some points. It might just be half a point when they finish outside the top 10.
I must say, it seemed like insult to injury sitting there. He seemed to be held for another dozen seconds or so until he got underway. What's happening now is Jean Gloria is starting to fight back after that brilliant start by Kylvitz. And as I said, seemed to be no grip at the front end of the DKR Engineering Duquesne. Jean Gloria's got it hooked up now. He's in the slipstream up the Mistral Straight, as is pretty much everyone else behind. And with lights flashing, you can see Mark Crader picking his way through the GT bunch. And then, of course, we'll have the Cool Racing car that should have been on the front with Nicola Molini. He's already picked off a couple just in the space of the first half of the lap, but he's an entire lap down. So the story of the race for him will be how many of those he can pick off. But what an arse, what a backward step for the start of the season.
Should be quick work to deposit the GTs. A whole different story though when you tack onto the back the LMP3s, thinking I've not only got to overtake these cars once but also twice again to start to register on timing and scoring. Iron Lynx's Ferrari in the striking white and black livery for 2020. Rino Mastronardi proving he'll be one to watch in qualifying earlier on today, and he's starting to stretch his legs in the race as well. Michel Broniszewski at the moment with not really an answer to his pace. The problem for Michel is there's now an LMP3 between his car and the GT3 leading car in GT3. So that was the order for the GTs. Problems, of course, for the 37 though, as we've described. Let's hear from Nicolas Lapierre from Cool Racing to see if he can explain. Now chatting to Haley.
So can you tell us, Nicola Molini was set to start second in car number 37. Unfortunately, an issue meant that he had to leave the pits later. Can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, basically, we had engine consumption issues since the beginning of the weekend. So the engine manufacturer tried to put a new map in the car and it didn't work for both cars. So we could bring them back to the pit, but we had time just to change it on one car. And the other car was stuck at the end of the pit lane. So we are now one lap down, so it pretty much screwed our race. But we're going to try to come back in the leader lap and then see what happened. But it's a very tough start for us.
Right, it's an unfortunate incident, but how are you going to deal with the rest of the race now? How are you going to fix it?
The other car is running P4 right now, and we have Ben driving after, so this should come back in the front. But it's very disappointing for Nico Molini and Edouard Copé, who did really good in qualifying, so we were hoping for them to have a good race, and now we are one lap down. It's going to be hard for them to come back.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's really, as a result, a kind of a ripple effect from Orica's woes with miscalculations, and however that came around with the lack of fuel consumption or increased fuel consumption with the new engine. Little question about Cool Racing though, why did they not change the higher priority car on the grid first and be stuck with the secondary? Or maybe they were both done in parallel and they just had a sticky point with the 37. Anyway, side-by-side GT3 action, which we mustn't ignore, with the Iron Lynx car of, was that Schiavone battling with Meyer?
Yes, indeed. No, it shouldn't be. It should be Schiavone with Hartshorn.
Hartshorn in the 50 car, yes. So that'll be 6th place in the GT3 category, and Claudio Schiavone then vaults up the field. Could be one to watch, and that's confirmed now through the next split. So Iron Lynx gain a place, Kessel Racing down one. The fight is on at the head of the order. Jean Gloria, with not a great deal of pressure from behind, now able to focus on the road in front and see if he can get close to Daniel Kylvitz's times. Bear in mind, Kylvitz is a gold-graded driver by the FIA. And Jean Gloria, a bronze, but at the moment able to certainly live with the pace of the German, only a second adrift from the Rinaldi Racing team leader.
But I think you can flip it round and say that Rinaldi Racing, new to prototype racing, Kylvitz likewise, and I mean for years he's been a super sharp tool in a Callaway Corvette in the ADAC GT Masters, so he's adapted to this supremely well, because Gloria was a standout driver in 2017 when he took the title and didn't just take it by small margins. He really was impressive that year. And it does seem through the twistier parts of the circuit, Kylvitz is just able to find grip that Gloria isn't. He's really attacking. Then Gloria benefits from the toe up the Mistral straight every time, but he's 0.7 of a second down. He gets a little closer when he's gone up the Mistral to Scene and beyond, but he gets the twisty bits. And maybe Kylvitz is taking too much out of his tyres too soon. Sort of thing you might do when you're new to prototypes, but I just think it's pat on the back for the German driver at the moment and for Rinaldi Racing. New territory for them, and they've really taken to it well. But what a shame we don't have the Morlini car in that mix as well. A 3-car battle rather than 2 would have been enthralling.
And a great cluster of LMP3 cars now working their way around the back section of the circuit, just all arriving at Scene together. Michael Jensen involved with that, Tom Cloet and Mark Crader as well. Jensen's actually lost a place that time around. Do they all get through turn 1? Well, yes, just about. But the problem for Tony Wells is that his car now is trailing one of the cheese wedges at the back. They call those bullets. They sit right behind the rear wheel, and the problem is they carry the tail light. So our illegal part of the car that needs to be in position. And I'm afraid at some point that car's going to have to come in for the team to take that up. It cannot just be dragging behind the car on a cable, which basically controls the light. There's also the metal element which allows that part of the car to be adjustable as well. Some call it the legality panel. I think the legality panel technically sits a bit further inside the car than that, but the cheese wedge needs to be in place, and that will be concerning for Nielsen Racing.
Okay, running third overall, but they've got two definite pit stops, so they're just going to have to bring their first one forward, get that done, stop it dragging. If it was just the one pit stop they were going to do, then they'd have little choice. It would have to be around the middle part in the race. So there is some scope for them, but for Tony Wells, the meeting's finally starting to go right after a few little problems and issues, and then obviously a little bit of a pat up the back, whether it's from Rory Penttinen or Maurice Smith, and he's got it all to do. Battle for the GT3 honours, and despite having put a few P3 cars between himself, that's Rino Mastronardi and Michał Broniszewski. Broniszewski has now got a clear run because John Schauman has moved ahead, got all the GT3 runners behind him. Actually, that's better. So the battle is rejoined, half a second between the pair of them. So Broniszewski hanging on to the tail of Mastronardi, but at last he's got clear line of sight there.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier for us to read as well. Ferrari versus Ferrari then at the head of the order. It's another 488 GT3 in third position, again from the Kessel Racing squad. So Broniszewski's sister car, Murad Sultanov, piloting that. Then Nicky Leutwiler's Porsche 911 GT3R in the TFT colours. Edex Sports Mercedes running fifth, and another Iron Licks Ferrari sixth after Claudio Schiavone pulled off that move on John Hartshorn a couple of laps ago. There's only 10 minutes of this race gone so far as there's a spinner at the 66. It feels like about half an hour, frankly, but the 66 car backwards at the final corner, and as he rejoins right into the side of one of the cool racing cars, I want to say. Surely it can't be more bad luck for the Swiss outfit. First of all, the spin as a result of a clash with the United Autosports LMP3, trying to pick out which Ligier that was. And as the 66 rejoins, being driven by Steve Parrow, right into the path of the 37. That's the car that joined the race a lap down from the pit lane. And Nicola Molini must be thinking, why did I get out of bed this morning?
Well, there can't be two sides to the bed. Whatever side he got out was the wrong side. And you can see the gesticulations there. And I'm afraid that Steve Parrow didn't cover himself in glory there. Whatever the recovery drive would have been from Nicola Molini, it's all over now. There is debris on the track. Those cars, must be pointed out, the final corner of the circuit, Virage Dupont, is about 120 degree right-hander. There is line of sight on the way in, but for Molini, he's abandoned his car. Might be an idea to get stay with it and get it clear. For Cool Racing, it's all gone horribly wrong. So
clash first of all, not sure how to judge that one initially. United Autosports going for a move into turn 14 Virage Dupont, but then questionable rejoining from Steve Parrow. What you have to be doing is keeping an eye on the marshals who are at the nearest post to turn 14, indicating whether it is safe or not to rejoin. Now I appreciate turn 14, the right-hander is completely blind. You cannot risk a rejoin like that, where he's just driven right in front of a car which is minding its own business, but also going very fast indeed.
Right, safety car as we saw out onto the circuit. We did notice that Steve Parrow was actually pushed into a spin at that corner.
Yeah.
There's no debate over that. It was one of the United Autosports cars in behind him, and I think that might have been Daniel Schneider. Yeah, in fact, Schneider's come into the pits now, so that would suggest damage to the nose of his car.
To the 24, yeah.
Also in the pits, MV2S, Christoph Cresp has come in as well, picked up some damage too. But it's the fact the cars are sitting across the circuit with nobody staying to clear the Molini car. And not surprising, that incident is under investigation.
There's an understatement. The 7 car of Tony Wells still trailing, and now it's actually left the car entirely. So once again, that calls into question the regulations and whether that car will be able to take an official result, because that's a very important component to the car. They might be able to fit a spare, of course, but they are very tricky bits if you've not got the connection. Still, you know, if it's been the way that it connects to the car has also been damaged. Very, very tricky to glue those things on or tape them. When bearing in mind you've got 2.5 minutes to try and turn the car around.
Now, of course, the breakaway duo of Daniel Karlwitz for Rinaldi Racing and DKR Engineering's Jean Gloria had a really major advantage. Under the safety car, that's come down to nothing. So for Tony Wells, just talking about him and the problem of the legality panel flying off the tail of the number 7, Nielsen Racing Duquesne, they're now nose to tail. And for those at the back, just to reiterate, it's iron links all the way in the GT GT3 class, but Michel Broniczewski for Kessel Racing was tucked in behind, and now Murad Sultanov has been able to close up, and the Russian driver might fancy his chances when they get to the restart, but damaged cars needing to be cleared.
Now, reading some regulations, some adjusted regulations for the 2020 season, when we get to ELMS, if there's a safety car deep into the race, wave by is going to be a new thing from racing in the US pretty much, which means that within the classes there's going to be an unravelling of the field, i.e. if you are the class leader and there are cars in your class between you and the safety car, they will be set free, and it will mean that you'll have LMP2s, LMP3s and GTs technically all on the same lap if that is the case before the safety car. So hopefully that will cure any battles we've had in the past that have been broken up because the leader's in the wrong place, the overall leader is in the wrong place. Now, we're not anywhere close enough to being far enough in the race for that to be in effect here, so we don't have to worry about it, thankfully. Only 14, nearly 15 minutes gone, and the GT3 leaders are all on the same lap, and they are now feet from one another preparing for a restart. That's a little while away because there are two very broken cars to be recovered from the exit of turn 14.
Right, we had a flurry of cars coming into the pits. One of them was Daniel Schneider for United Autosports, and we felt that was his car that collided with Steve Parrott to spin him round. They have effected a driver change. Andy Merrick has taken that over and exited the pits, whereas MV2S, they also brought their Ligier in, but Christoph Crest brought it in and went back out. So United Autosports probably thinking very quickly on their feet, and they've got Andy into the car. But of course, it's a 2-hour race. We've only just got to the 15-minute marker point in this race, but behind the safety car we are, and those two cars still stuck on the circuit. The Rinaldi Steve Parrott, car number 66, facing sort of the pit wall, and sideways with a very tattered front end is Nicola Morlini. Just to reiterate, should have started from the front row, did start from the pit lane, one lap down, and was making his way through the tail enders, and then came up to turn 14, Virage Dupont, minding his own business, trying to make up ground, and unfortunately Steve Parrott decided that was the point to rejoin the circuit, went across and left Morlini with nowhere to go, thus the contact, thus the fury from Morlini as he stalked away from the incident.
Thankfully, Haley was well clear of Nicolas Lapierre in the interview she did with him before that happened, because I don't think it would be wise to go down to have a word with the Frenchman now. Steve Parrott, definitely grounds for a naughty manoeuvre down for United Autosports, but the rejoin largely questionable. It's one incident that directly leads to another, and the contact was that severe that the front left wheel of Nicola Morlini's car snaps up, wishbone both top and bottom broken. Thankfully the wheel didn't come completely off, but Morlini's reaction was somewhat predictable as he clambered out of the car and majorly gesticulated to Steve Parrott. So no question as to where he thought the blame lies. The incident is under investigation. There are actually grounds for taking the whole of the field through the pit lane because of the shards of carbon fibre that will be down there, and the last thing we want is endangering the Michelin tyres that are still on the cars that remain in the race. Very easy to get a shard of some nasty bodywork into a tyre. Bearing in mind they've still got to do best part of a stint yet, but the safety car driver went very, very wide around the outside of turn 14, so much so they were 2 or 3 car widths off the track, and I think that's a pretty decent way of playing it. Should be safe out there. One quad bike on the scene, maybe another one to arrive in order to retrieve those cars, and thankfully these are 4-wheel drive quad bikes, very, very strong bits of kit, and fingers crossed it'll be a fairly quick recovery. The problem is the pit lane entries moved in recent years. If it was still in the old position, you could just take them straight down the pits, but it's a corner back these days. And I'm not sure where the easiest exit is to retrieve those 2 battered LMP3 cars. A few more laps around the safety car, I reckon, Bruce.
Yeah, one would think so, and just looking at the various replays, one feels that it could have been a 3-car incident because EDEX Sports' Patrice Lafargue did really well. He was the next car on the scene in his GT Mercedes. The start was under investigation, but look at that. I mean, the most remarkable start from the outside of the second row. An amazing getaway, as opposed to a poor getaway from John Gloria, was from Rinaldi Racing, from Daniel Karlwitz. Read it really, really well. Maybe that's by dint of all the years he's done GT racing, but probably fancied his chance of getting into second place, found he could get into the lead, and John Gloria struggled for grip over through the first few corners. And so that is why Karlwitz is leading the race, but Gloria, using his P3 experience, has got right onto his tail. I was going to say it's good to see Morlini's car is being cleared. It's sad, it's awfully sad to see it being cleared, because that was a car that was never going to win this race, having had to start a lap down and from the back of the field. But it would have been a story, something worth watching, because it should have been the fastest car in qualifying. And so that was scuppered. So yes, quite right not to have a camera waggled in front of Cool Racing's shareholder man, sort of making it run, Nicolas Lapierre, because he would not be a happy man at all. Sky getting a lot darker, Johnny.
Yes, it is.
We talked this morning about the possibility of rain. It's sort of skirted with grey cloud, but now it looks a little more solid.
That's something to keep our eye on. I mentioned to you on the drive-in this morning, scattered showers were predicted, although they actually went away on the forecast at about lunchtime, and the day was not necessarily all the way through sunshine, but we've got more cloud than I expected. Highest percentage that I read was 25 for just a handful of minutes really through the day, and then it would drop back to 15% chance of rain. Sometimes the rain entirely misses us at Le Castellet, and others it'll go straight towards the centre of the circuit, so that will be in the minds of the teams. Wet weather tyres are available from Michelin. They're unlimited, in fact, if Eduardo Freitas declares this a wet race, whereas the slick tyres are heavily restricted. And when we get further into the season, you will be able to carry over some tyres that have already been registered to your car for an earlier round. So we'll get to the point where it'll be 2 brand new sets, so 8 brand new tyres per car, and you can carry over 4 scrubbed tyres. Whereas this weekend, I believe it's 3 sets per car for the LMP3s.
Contrasting fortunes for Rinaldi Racing, new to prototype racing. One of their cars, number 55, leading the race in the hands of Daniel Kalvitz. The sister car, number 66, being put onto a flatbed. Not its fault that Steve Parrow was put into a spin. It was his fault, undeniably, that he drove back onto the circuit at turn 14. The final corner of the lap, limited view as you arrive, pressing on as you would be, and unfortunately straight into the path of Nicola Lamborghini. Morlini was a lap down through no fault of his own, but trying to make up ground, and the clash left shards of bodywork across the final corner. It's pretty much all been swept up, so waiting for any signal to let us know we're going full racing again, and maybe this will be the chance for Jean Gloria to get it right on the restart. He certainly got it wrong when we had to get away on the rolling start.
I do remember an incident, though, at Le Mans last year, or possibly the year before, when Roberto Gonzalez rejoined the Ford chicane, and it seemed like he drove right into the path of Mike Conway's Toyota, but actually it was Mike who was pinged for being in error because he wasn't observing the yellow flags. And there is a rule: if you see the yellow flags, you need to be at a speed where you can be prepared to stop. So it seems to me that Steve Parrow was at fault, but that's why I don't make the decisions, and someone on a far greater pay grade does. So we shouldn't call that earlier than the decision is made. It's under investigation, and we are mere spectators. But we will get an official word as to who was to blame. Not really that we know that, to be honest, but it's an interesting incident that was one moment leading into another.
What would have been interesting is if we'd had a camera position at turn 14 looking back to turn 13, because what we only saw was a long shot taken down the start-finish straight, so we couldn't see the approaching car. But anyhow, leave it in the hands of the race officials. So really, really unfortunate. Well, we still have, of the 25 starters, still have 23 running, and the car running last is one that I think really might have a role to play in this race. Andy Merrick, he's taken over the second of the United Autosport cars very early on. It had to come in. Maybe an inspired choice. He's taken it over from his teammate, and we will see where that progresses from there. But a twist in the tail. Took over from Daniel Snyder.
The team manager of the race leader is being summoned to race control, I noticed. Daniel Kalvitz drives the 55 Rinaldi Racing car, and its team manager being summoned to race control. Not sure what that's about.
Well, also that is also the team manager of car 66, the one that rejoined the circuit, whether it's been a multi-purpose call-up or maybe it's been adjudged there was a jump start, because that of course was under investigation, which is standard fare. It was a good start, but it didn't look as though he really got the jump. He just nipped out from behind the pole man.
Yeah. I've had the chance to see that start from a few different angles, and I'm sure the race director's doing so as well. Now, slow car on track is the TFT, Nicky Leutwiler driven Porsche 911. This car was running in 4th position in GT3. Safety car rules, no overtaking, but if a car just grinds to a halt, you've got no option. You have to drive past it. And it's left right in the middle of the track, thankfully a little bit over to the left-hand side. Where is that?
Turn 6. So it's just where you really want to be pressing on. You've gone around the bottom end of the circuit, the lowest point on the circuit at Virage de la Sainte-Baume, and just at the point at which you're trying to get the power down to accelerate through the kink at turn 7 up the Mistral Straight. So absolutely right where it doesn't need to be. If only it could have got off to the side of the circuit. This car had its problems yesterday, and in fact did very well to qualify. So just the field was about to be released, probably within a lap.
Working at T6, they are working on car 2. We have marshals working at T6, they are working on car 2. We're trying to get the car to a safe position.
And at this point, the safety car is just going around the final corner of the lap, so they've got about a minute till it brings the field around. But all teams will be getting messages through to their drivers. They got a quad bike very quickly to the Porsche, but it's waiting for a signal to connect it up. And one of the marshals, I see there, Johnny, waving through the window to Nicky Leutwiler to try and find out, is it about to fire up? Because obviously that'd be far quicker if they could get it underway and it's under its own steam.
Yeah. Now, next question is, are we going to see teams taking their mandatory pit stop during the safety car period? Standard ELMS and WEC rules are that the pit lane is closed for the first 5 laps of a safety car period.
We have a car stopped on driver's left at the exit of T6. Safety car is instructed to stay totally to the right.
But this is an ideal window, is it not, to do your longer pit stop. You can't change drivers because each driver has to do a minimum of 55 minutes.
T6 should be done totally to the right, please. We've got a stopped car and marshals working on track.
But what you can do, I think, is soak up your long pit stop, 2.5 minutes, whilst everyone's going round behind the safety car. We'll try and bring you some further news on that. I think the news may be a flood of cars down the pit lane. However, Porsche now being moved, sadly not under its own power, but on a towing strop behind one of those very strong quad bikes. They tried that with the 2 LMP3s at the end of the lap, but they were too badly broken and needed to be lifted onto flatbeds. Porsche's an awful lot more easy to move, and I'm afraid it's going to be out of the race now. CD Sport into the pit lane. They've just come in, haven't they? And I also noticed that the 24 United Autosports car of Andy Merrick has done a 2 minutes and 30-second pit stop.
That was the driver change. He took it over from Daniel Schneider, and that was the car.
We were concerned that was maybe damage from the Steve Parrow clash.
Yes, but the reason, and the other car that came in at that time did a 49-second in and out. That was Christoph Cresp. He's now running further up the order. I'm particularly sad that TFT Racing Porsche is out. It's the only Porsche in the GT3 class here, and it was going really well in the hands of Nicky Leutwiler, up to 4th place in class, and the whole point of sports car racing is to have as much variety as you possibly can. That is out for now, but I think that's a car that's going to feature pretty strongly through the course of this season. Certainly hope so.
Official entry, we should say, is PZ Obera Zurichsee by TFT, because it runs with its major sponsor. CD Sport in, Jacques Wolf to bring that car down pit road. That's going to be doing a 150-second pit stop, no doubt about it. Get the 2.5 minutes out of the way. They're going to have to come in and do another mandatory pit stop because of this concern about fuel mileage with the brand new Nissan but Orica prepared engine. But I think that's a great tactic. Whilst everyone is circulating at a much reduced speed, well below what we would normally have for, let's say, a slow zone or a virtual safety car in the ELMS. Sometimes, I mean, if the Porsche had happened to be broken down on its own, that might have been able to be covered with the 80 kilometre speed limit out on track. Full course yellow, in other words. Down towards turn 5 goes the safety car train, again about to arrive in the incident area, but the Porsche is well clear now of the track. There's still concern about carbon fibre shards, I reckon, at Virage du Pont though. Make sure there's a racing line safe to be used there. And this is a really tricky start to the season for the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Old grey cells will be having to be used by the team members down on pit road, because normally this is fairly simple in terms of strategy. You stop roughly between 55 and 65 minutes, switch your driver over, do your longer pit stop, send him, and to the flag, whoever's quickest wins. But now with an extra pit stop and a safety car period where some are stopping but not all are, very interesting indeed. Jack Wolf didn't get out of the CD Sport car. They've done a very long pit stop there, 3 minutes and 20. And will definitely have to stop again, if only for fuel.
Well, and the fact Geoffrey Donato needs to have his stint in the
Safety car lights off. He will be coming in at the end of this lap. Safety car will be coming in at the end of this lap.
And yeah, with the Daniel Schneider car, which is now being driven by Andy Merrick, gold graded, Andy'd be a bit frustrated to be in the safety car queue and not being able to make his extra pace count. It will count in a moment though, because the safety car is going to come in, and we just sit back and enjoy Andy Merrick's driving. See how far up the order he can get. He will have to hand the car back though to Daniel later on to make sure that Schneider gets his 55 minutes in. So Kylevitz deliberately holding the pack
back to racing speed once you cross the line. We're back to racing speed once you cross the line.
But Eduardo Freitas makes it obvious that we're now racing once again with just over 90 minutes on the clock, and already the overtaking can start just before the start line, which is about 111 metres further down the road than the finish line, by the way. And Tony Wells actually cedes the place. So he got on the brakes extra early there to allow Rory Penttinen through. And I think another car as well, possibly. No, just the
Wells
opposite.
he's in fourth, but Rory Penttinen very nearly tossed it off the circuit there because he just couldn't get the braking done for turn number one. Managed to make it work. So up to the Graf car up to third place, but that was Tony Wells being complicit as well. That was a very mature driving, but he's now under attack from Maurice Smith, so he's really got to make sure he gets it right at the point where the Porsche pulled off. That's turn 6 now accelerating onto the Mistral straight. Then just right behind him, Maurice Smith found the front of his car washing away. He didn't get the grip he wanted, so his chance of getting a really good tow went away, and Eric de Donker now is getting a 2-car tow. He's in 6th, but he should be having a cracking tow up the Mistral. Worth pointing out, Johnny, no chicane halfway up this time, so it's a long run up to Scene, and the advantage can be huge. But in fact, de Donker has fallen away just when I thought he's going to be catching up.
Yeah, the double toe didn't work for the Motorsport 98 car, so still there in 6th position, 3rd of the Ligiers. All brand new cars, remember, for this season. So the Ligier JS P320, as the latest iteration is called, and Duquesne's M30 D08. All cars in the LMP3 category running with now 5.5 litre Nissan engine, but it is prepared by Orica, and the car's in danger of not doing the full distance on fuel consumption, so they're going to have to come in and do an extra stop. Very intriguing. By the way, the safety car procedure, both going in and out of it, no further action, so obviously that's been reviewed. Up the inside from quite a way back comes the car driven by John Showerman. That's the United Autosports entry. Late on the brakes, nice little move that, set it up through 13 and finished it off into Virage Dupont turn 14.
Yeah, I was just looking to see if that was Andy Merrick, also for United Autosports. He's a little bit further back, but he's picked off almost all of the GT field. Yeah, background of the shot, he's working his way forward through the pack, but that's the sort of time you can just be caught up in someone else's incident. But Andy Merrick's been around the block more than a few times, so caution knitted in with his speed. In the GT class, it's still Rino Mastronardi from Michel Bronicheski, not a lot in it. Skies still glaring and grey, but it's quite high cloud, so maybe we won't be getting the rain, but keep my eye on that.
Yeah, I need to know the exact direction that the weather is coming from, and also which are the blacker areas of the sky, but it certainly looks threatening in certain parts, probably looking from turn 1 down the main straight, as if it will arrive, if it does arrive, from turns 9 and 10 first of all.
Well, thank goodness they're not quick corners. What's that first one called? Scene. Oh yes.
Just about the fastest corner probably that we visit all season, although Eau Rouge is not hanging around there at Spa-Francorchamps. Still, the pressure is on from Maurice Smith on Tony Wells. This is the battle now for 4th position as they head to Beausset now, and the exit of Senior Corner, the double right at Beausset, and Garlaban comes next. Very tricky end to the lap. all 5 and 6 very technical, but you gain and potentially lose so much time through 11, 12 and 13.
One of the things we were talking about earlier, Johnny, you picked it up, was Tony Wells dragging that the panel that then fell off the car. Team manager of Team 7, of car number 7, that's his car to race control immediately, and drive-through penalty for a jump start for our race leader. So it was no wonder they were investigating the start. So Daniel Kalvitz, it seemed it wasn't totally blatant, but it was enough to pick up a penalty. So drive-through penalty. So suddenly Jean Gloria sitting pretty at the front, but Rory Penttinen was as quick to within a tenth of a second last time round. In fact, to within 100th of a second. So Gloria will now be leading the race once Daniel Kalvitz comes in. So suddenly, for car 55, that was why that team manager was called to the tower. Sounds rather ominous, but a drive-through penalty. And don't forget, it's a long pit lane. You now go into it out of turn 13 rather than out of the final corner, which adds to the length of the pit lane. So your drive-through penalty hurts that a little bit more.
How a race can turn, and so quickly. Just ask Cool Racing, just ask Rinaldi Racing about that. 55 drive-through, 66 out of the race. The 37 Cool Racing car rudely assaulted at the final corner. And Nicola Molini's weekend just went from bad to worse. But Jean Gloria, at the end of this, will be leading, and by very nearly 2 seconds. Now, Kalvitz doesn't have the option of serving one of his mandatory pit stops at the same time as doing the drive-through. That's going to be entirely separate. And a drive-through penalty costs you the best part of 45 seconds here. It's about 32 seconds from pit in to pit out, but just to get into pit lane's a bit of an effort as you peel off at turn 13. A bit of a look at the inside there, and Andy Merrick just behind an intriguing battle is now starting to monster Mark Crader. So the other scrap must be Rob Hodes versus Michael Jensen. Yes, they're separated by just 2.5 tenths of a second. So Hodes and Jensen scrapping over 9th and 10th, and Andy Merrick, now already by John Showerman, is right behind Mark Crader in the Grain Market car.
Michael Jensen looks a little bit quicker than Rob Hodes, but he's got to find a way to go past, and of course he's going to have Andy Merrick right on him very, very soon indeed. Merrick using a toe down the start-finish straight under Mark Crader's rear wing, and you'd expect him to go, well, he's got a choice, inside or outside at the first corner. Has he been spotted? The inside is the safe line. That's going to driver's left on the way in. Pulls it off very, very well indeed. So he's got a couple more cars to pick off. Then a bit of a gap to Yuri Wagner, but what he probably wants is actually a few quiet laps where he can just press on without having to overtake others.
Yeah, had to be no messing there. Showed his nose in the mirror of Mark Crader, and then very late on the brakes indeed. If you're going to go for an overtake like that, it has to be full commitment, which it was from the Welshman. And he gains another place. So nice little bit of strategy being played here by United Autosports. Be interesting to see how far up that car can finish. Although we are going to have another dose of Daniel Schneider at some point, as I've mentioned. Down the Mistral straight, Tony Wells remains the 4th place car. Maurice Smith is 5th, and now joining the party, Eric Dodonka once again, still trying to get that double toe into senior corner. He's not quite close enough as Maurice Smith really bounces over the curbs there when the car is on the ragged edge of grip. Just shows how grippy these Michelin tyres are, even this far into the stint. Admittedly, we've had quite a large portion behind the safety car, and also the virtually brand new track surface helped. It was resurfaced at the start of last season.
Well, it's been a really, really good lap for Daniel Kalvitz. Don't forget, he controlled the restart. We know he's got to come in for a drive-through penalty, but he's eked his advantage. It went out to 3.4 seconds. However, it's going to be, as Johnny pointed out, at least 45 seconds lost. And now car 7 must repair the rear right bodywork and light at the next pit stop. Of course, they've got a choice of 2 pit stops, but that's just going to drop them right down the order. Running 3rd. And Daniel Kalvitz has now entered the pits. He's come in for his drive-through penalty, so he's falling down the order. So John Gloria leads the race now from Rory Penttinen, 2.2 seconds.
And that is the point where he was judged to be just ahead of the DKR Engineering car. It was starting, that car 55, from 3rd position, so he was ahead of Rory Penttinen, but that's fine. 3rd can be ahead of 4th, but 3rd place cannot be ahead of the pole man as they cross the start line, and there will be exact data on that because there's a timing loop in the asphalt which registers when those cars cross the line. You're probably talking thousandths of a second there, but it's just not a game worth risking, bearing in mind the magnitude of the race you're likely to lose. 45 seconds is massive to the race time. And now, of course, he's back into traffic, so you're not going to make amends for that very quickly either.
Well, the steps to race control be worn shiny. Car number 23, team manager of that, one of the two United Autosports car, John Showerman and Wayne Boyd. And it's Showerman who's out on the track at the moment, running effectively last in the P3 class, but clearly something untoward has occurred, or certainly requires some investigation.
Just caught a glimpse of Gilles Duquesne, by the way, sitting in the Duquesne garage, and he has acquired the Norma manufacturer and renamed it Duquesne for this new season. Brand new car as well, so the first time we've ever had a Duquesne car on the grid, the M30 D08, and Duquesne team also represented on the European Le Mans Series grid. Now the pressure is being put on Rob Hodes in the number 10 Nielsen Racing car, so don't get that confused with Tony Wells' machine, which is number 7. This is the battle for 8th and 9th, with a recovering Daniel Kylwitz fresh from his drive-through penalty.
The pace of Rory Penton now in second place for Graf. We saw him gaining positions of going around Tony Wells. He's now getting very, very close to the tail of the race leader, 1.6 seconds down on Jean Glorieux. So suddenly Graf looking really strong with their Ligier as they're hunting down the leading Duquesne from DKR Engineering. Daniel Kylwitz, though, continues to pick his way up the order, does it very well indeed. It was the smallest of mistakes he made at the start, but the ramifications, as Johnny pointed out, 45 seconds taking you out of the lead of the race, dumping you down the order. Waiting to see where he crosses the start-finish line, but it's really made his event very hard indeed.
Now concerns for John Showerman's number 23 car, with the team manager of United Autosport being sent to race control. Not sure what that's about, but it will become clearer.
9th position was where Kylwitz crossed the start-finish line. He's 3 and a bit seconds down on Andy Merrick, so 2 cars recovering. Of course, Merrick's car was recovering because it's already had a pit stop rather than a drive-through penalty and a driver change. That cost him a lot of time, but Merrick really pressing on in 8th place, but he's soon going to have company from Kylwitz.
And some good times coming through now from Eric de Donker in 5th, Yuri Wagner 6th, Tom Cloyet and the Merrick car. So I wonder whether they're all being G'd up by Merrick, sensing that he's getting larger and larger in the mirrors and just upping their pace as a direct reaction. 7 car now missing its bullet from the rear right corner, and that will have to be, well, reapplied. They better have a spare. It's going to be so tricky to reattach that. They don't just clip on. It's dependent on how they've broken off in the first place, and they look fairly vulnerable. They certainly are if you get a big old shove from the rear, but they also stand up to quite a bit of punishment, and I was surprised how quickly that whole part left the car within a couple of laps really of the initial contact. But it's now that extra bit of the 7 car is stranded out at turn 3. They're not going to get that back till the end of the race, and they'll have to dig out a spare from the truck over the line. An hour and 20 minutes just under to go. Now focusing on the battle for 12th position. Christophe Cresp heading that. He drives for MV2S Racing.
And he's already had a pit stop, so he's doing well to pick anyone off. Just want to point, guess the name of the driver who set fastest lap of the race. Andy Merrick in 8th place, but we've got a Ferrari cruising down the start-finish straight. Car 74, that was one of the quick ones. It's Michel Pronochesky.
Second place. And no longer. And what happened there? Is that a tyre going down?
Well, I'm not entirely sure. We got bodywork rubbing, but I think that was actually, no, that was just dust. I think he just outbraked himself into the final corner, but he seems to have very little drive as he goes down the start-finish straight, so that makes it easier for Rino Mastronardi. He's got 11 seconds advantage. No, that Ferrari's pulling off just past pit exit now.
So Kessel Racing go from a great position to a slightly less of one, although Broniszewski's car's just been immediately replaced by his teammate Murad Sultanov. So Kessel's still second. It's just they're not second and third any longer. And there are concerned looks from the Pratt perch for Kessel Racing. Yellow flags now covering turn 1. Double waved yellows, in fact, because of that car that has ground to a halt right on the start line. And that's going to be tricky to recover as well. Michel Broniszewski actually doing a good job in finding the marshals and virtually the overlap in the concrete wall. And maybe that can be recovered under just a local yellow.
Yeah, that again is the experience of a good driver, realising, you know, a lot of them, they do the track walk, but not everyone notices where the escape roads are, and yet you never know when it's going to be to your advantage to do that. Andy Merrick continues to pick off places. The next driver to be passed is Tom Cloet. It's still white and blue Mullner Motorsport car leading that little grouping in 7th place overall, but Andy Merrick super fast, nearly 2 seconds quicker last time around, but he's got to find the gap. He'll make the gap. Oh, Cloet's good though, very deep on the run out of turn 2, not leaving any gap at all, but then he tightens up, and Andy Merrick, it doesn't look as though he's going to take no for an answer. Nicely done into turn 3 there, because then the corners come thick and fast. But again, that's experience, just knowing just how hard to push and how much of your nose to stick up the inside.
And actually, rather than compromise his run through 1 and 2, he stayed behind Cloet, got a good run out of there, utilised a bit of the toe as well, and was in a prime spot into 3 to pick off what was 7th position for Andy Merrick. So that United Autosports car is flying. Next man on his list will be Yuri Wagner for racing experience. Eric de Donker a little bit further up the road as well. But they're actually all clustering nicely just ahead of Andy Merrick. He may be able to pick off more than 1 car per lap for the next few, as Tony Wells still cannot shake Eric de Donker, although equally the Belgian can't get by the man from the northeast of England.
There were Yuri Wagner showing a good little run, but he's got Andy Merrick behind him. Yuri Wagner in 6th, Andy Merrick in 7th. We've got 4 cars in the early stage of the final stages of the lap through turn 12. Nearly a place gained up the inside into third turn. No, you've got Merrick's going to look up the inside into turn 13, but it's not a corner for overtaking. Turn 14, it's a corner for trouble. But
he might try to stab up the inside. No, not quite. But often if you can shadow somebody through 13 and then pounce when they're least expecting it into 14, seen that a number of times through the years.
Yeah, but look, go for a wider shot, and who's behind Andy Merrick? Green flashes on the side. It's Daniel Kalvitz. He rejoined in 9th. He's now up to 8th. He's gained a lot of time as these cars fight for position in front of him. And Merrick Kalvitz just put in the fastest middle sector of anyone. And so it's all seesawing. And up the front, it's down to 0.389 of a second. Number 3 still leading the way. Jean Gloria, Rory Penton, the Finn, right on his tail. He's been taking a 10th of a second here, 10th of a second there. And now he's close enough to really get the toe up the Mistral straight. There's no one immediately in front of them. And this is the lead of the race. Super tight, really good run for Graf in their Ligier, but it's Duquesne that's still leading for DKR Engineering.
This isn't Rory Penton's first experience of ACO rules racing. Ran in the Asian Le Mans Series 2019-2020. That's a season that spans 2 calendar years. With Graf, back with that French squad once again. The Finn impressing mightily here. Yeah, really condensing that gap to Jean Gloria. We will have to keep our eye on that. It was 2nd place, remember, prior to Daniel Kalvitz, who goes for a move at the inside of Senior. That's brave. Needed to have full trust in the car on his outside, Yuri Wagner in the racing experience car, but side by side at Senior action. I like to see it, but the scope for it going wrong was pretty high. And then into the double right at Beausset, he secures the move. So Kalvitz was the race leader. Then he did the drive-through, and that left the battling duo of Gloria and Penton out front. How about Andy Merrick round the outside of 13? Gives Eric de Donker plenty of racing room and makes that move stick through Virage du Lac.
Great move from Merrick there. So up he goes. His next target is Tony Wells. Up front, it's down to 0.4 of a second. It's seesawing a little bit backwards and forwards, but Jean Gloria still leading away from Rory Penton. And behind him, it's a full 10 seconds back to Maurice Smith, who's actually lonely. He's got 6 seconds advantage over Tony Wells, who's now coming under attack. So the driver can actually relax to go through the tail end of his opening stint in this race. His only stint in the race is Maurice Smith for Cool Racing. At least something's going right for that team. Of course, their quicker car got to start a lap down from the pit lane, had to wait for the entire field to come through, and then as it fought its way forward, Nicholas Morlini caught up in the incident at the final corner of the race as the car rejoined into his path, and out he goes. But the sister car running well in 3rd.
Yeah, and on course for a podium, so Nicolas Lapierre will have everything crossed, but that can continue. The problem, though, for Maurice Smith is that, as you say, there's 10 seconds now between he and this battling duo. They are very, very close indeed, although they were closer on the previous lap. So is that a sign that Jean Gloria is settling into a rhythm? Andy Merrick getting a great run on Tony Wells, pulls to the left-hand side, so wrong line you would think from Senior, unless he can sweep across the nose of Tony Wells. Can't get it done. That's Ferrari up ahead is awkwardly placed as well, but he's managed it as Merrick, and now darts up the inside of Ferrari number 9 of Deborah Meyer, who's playing things sensibly and staying well off the racing line as all these LMP3s thunder by.
That was actually decent driving from Deborah Meyer. She's not quite on the pace in GT3, but she does use her mirrors. Now we've got a spinner, red with the yellow flash up the nose. CD Sport, car number 5. That's Michael Jensen.
Yes. Now running 14. I think Jensen was a little bit further up the road, or maybe only one place further up the road before that spin. John Showerman in the 23 car 13th, Mark Crader 12th for Grain Market Racing. Rob Hodes, actually Crader's just got ahead of Hodes, so as Hodes had a drama on that lap, losing 2 spots in that relatively short sector. Just stream out of sector 2 and into Senior corner, which sector 3 contains lots of tight and technical corners, including Senior itself, and then the double right at Beausset.
Rory Penttinen now leading. There might be a problem for DKR Engineering because Jean Gloria is 7 seconds behind, looking for number 3 down that back straight. He's still in second place, but it's the orange nose on the black wings, and he's being caught by Maurice Smith now. He's only 3.3 seconds down. Surely there wasn't a spin that we didn't get to see from Gloria, but he's effectively lost about 10 seconds in that manoeuvre. Just as we come up, an hour and 10 minutes, the pit lane is starting to become busy. Mechanics are going out into position, so the pit stops, the regular pit stops, coming up. But what's the problem for Jean Gloria? 7.3 seconds now down behind Rory Penttinen.
Car running sweetly. Did he have a clash with the CD Sport car of Michael Jensen that we saw backwards, which delayed him? It's a very strange incident, though, that, as you say, has cost him 8 seconds or more.
And he's about to lose a place to 69, Maurice Smith closing right in behind him as well as they go around towards the end of the lap. Rory Penttinen leading for Graf, car number 26, so it's no longer a Duquesne in the lead of the race. It's Olivier. It's been Rino Mastronardi all the way in the GT3 class. He's, 16 seconds the good over Murad Sultanov. But don't forget, of course, the leading challenger in that class, Michel Bronicheski, had that moment where he ran off at the final corner. He's dropped way down the order. So for Iron Lynx, as you said, a team that sort of reinvented itself, lots of assistance from AF Corsa. If you want a Ferrari, it's not a bad team to call on. So leading the way.
Gloria spun on his own, potentially, unless there was contact with Rory Penttinen. Now, haven't had a message on the screen to suggest there was an incident between cars 26 and 3. So was that just the pressure of the fin being feet away from the rear bumper of Jean Gloria? Thankfully he didn't hit anything, because I can't see a mark on that car, and it is back up to speed. So it was a spin at Senior corner, or maybe the run into Beausset, which has cost him the 8 seconds. And now we really are going to see how talented Jean Gloria is, and see whether he can reel in Rory Penttinen. Meanwhile, Daniel Kylvitz continues to try and slice his way up the order, trying to pressurise Eric de Donker into a mistake.
Right, the tail end of the LMP3 class taking their pit stops early, but we've got Penttinen leading by 8 seconds, let's call it 7.9 seconds really from Jean Gloria. Maurice Smith just another 3 seconds down. But the bottom half of the P3 class in the pit lane, including car number 5 that we saw have a rotation of its own, that's Michael Jensen. Didn't see if he was pushed, did he jump? But so this is the first and possibly, the first of 2 pit stops in the P3 class. Because of course the fuel consumption was too great and the teams were told they'd have to make they only wanted 1 pit stop, and that's what the plan when they came here to this meeting, but they're going to have 2.
It'll be interesting to see if and when driver changes are done here, because I thought this was a little early to be making the stops. We've got 51 minutes on the clock. We'll wait and see whether there are any further messages on the screen, and of course drive time infringements cannot be issued until the end of the race, because you can always stick a driver in for an extra 5 minutes at the end. The officials don't really know how the teams will play it. Eric de Donker's happy to come in at this stage at least, and the Motorsport 98 car peels away out of the frying pan and into the pit lane then, after all that pressure from Daniel Kylvitz. You can see the sinuous nature of the entry to pit road. He used to come in immediately after turn 14. That was always a bit of a clumsy way to get down pit road though, so it was readjusted. As the Grain Market car pulls away and immediately stalls. I thought there was concern there maybe about an unsafe release, but the lollipop was held skyward and was never brought down again. That is the Grey Market car, isn't it? That's stopped dead stick. Yes, it is, the 20 machine. And the lollipop is still being held there. Maybe they realised it had gone too soon. And it's very tricky to adhere to the 2 minutes and 30-second time in the pit lane, because you've got a stopwatch running either on the pit wall or sometimes in the car for the driver to see. But it's a preemptive release, because you will send the car with 11, 12, sometimes 15 seconds left on the clock and just hope that the calculations are right. And you've judged where your pit box is in relation to the pit stop, the pit lane out timing loop.
So we've got a change in the order, because out of second and third positions we've got a change. They're coming for the pits. That's Jean Gloria and Maurice Smith.
So the Rory Penttinen car continues out front, and now the deficit back to Andy Merrick is 15 seconds. Tony Wells 8.2 seconds adrift. Daniel Kalvitz is right on the back bumper though of Tony Wells on this, the 26th lap of the opening round of the Michelin Le Mans Cup.
Andy Merrick, fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 49.9 seconds. That's why he's closing. He's under 14 seconds down on Rory Penttinen. He's already done a pit stop, but that was very early to take over from Daniel Schneider. So Rory Penttinen leads the way, but the charge from Merrick has been super impressive.
CD Sport car back into the race with an hour and 6 minutes left on the clock, and into turns 1 and 2 that goes. Very slight rise in the track surface as well. Never really think of much gradient change here at Paul Ricard, but there is some at the end of the Mistral Straight. It's quite a climb up into Senior proper, but you really don't shave too much speed off that because of the incline. You're going so fast already, and then you rely on, in an LMP3 car certainly, on the downforce effect as you turn in and hope the car grips as well as it did on the previous lap. Jean Gloria out of the car in number 3 and replaced by his teammate then. So that'll be Laurence Heur, who we heard from earlier on in the broadcast. Meanwhile, the 23 car up the inside of the Grey Market entry, now being driven by Alex Mortimer. So that was Wayne Boyd, the Ulsterman, leaving it pretty late into turn 14, but a clean manoeuvre. And Wayne Boyd, who was electric in the European Le Mans Series qualifying earlier on today. ELMS race to come tomorrow, by the way, from 11 AM local time. Another car being told it must have its lights on is the number 6 entry from CD Sport. That's the car I think just rejoined from the pits actually. Engine off as it was refueled, and maybe an electric problem has prevented Geoffrey Donada from illuminating those headlights.
It's so hard to read the story of the race for Andy Merrick. His job with that really early driver change from Daniel Schneider. We thought there was a bit of contact, Schneider against Steve Parrow, but it was obviously decided when the race rejoined, Andy's pace in traffic and ability to pick his way up the order was going to be crucial. That was why he was thrown in, but he's closing. He's 12.2 seconds down on the race leader, but of course they both still have to make one more pit stop for Andy Merrick, but 2 pit stops for Rory Penttinen's car, leading by 12 seconds.
Iron Links Ferrari heading round Beausset corner, and that machine still at the head of the GT3 pack and as far up the field now as 6th place. It could be 4th pretty soon. But now let's get some reaction from Jean Gloria after his stint in the Michelin Le Mans Cup with Haley Edmonds.
That's right, I'm joined here by Jean Gloria, who started this race in pole position. You worked your way up to the top after losing that top spot. However, you just lost 8 seconds on the track. What happened?
I was a bit too enthusiastic, and I think T11 or T12 got on the blue, the dirty side of the track, and I lost the back. And a very stupid mistake, like most mistakes, but I hope it won't do too much damage to our race. We'll see at the end.
So you just handed over to your teammate Laurence Heur. How are you feeling for the next stint, for his stint?
Very excited, of course. Very happy with how it went in the beginning, and pace is good, car is good, all feels great. So I'm very happy and curious to see what Laurence is able to do now.
Thank you very much.
Jean Gloria chatting to Haley, and very honest there, holding his hands up to an error he made after the pressure from Rory Penton, and just shows, doesn't it? You don't always have to go for an obvious overtake, just your mere presence can sometimes force the error.
I thought it was very gracefully described. I got a little enthusiastic. Fastest lap of the race, Andy Merrick. New fastest lap of the race, Andy Merrick. He just set 3 fastest laps in a row. 1 minute 49.33 seconds. That is faster than pole time. He's been magnificent. 10.1 seconds down now on race leader Rory Penton. But those two are the quickest drivers out there. But looking for some other roles coming up, because of course we've got the likes of Ben Barnicoat taking over from Maurice Smith, and Maurice was, don't forget, in the top 5 cars for a while, really enjoying the battle in the first into the race. But we get the change now. We're nearly halfway through this 2-hour race. An advantage of under 10 seconds now as Merrick chips away. Penton hanging on, but surely these drivers will be coming in fairly soon indeed. Both the Iron Lynx Ferraris in the pit lane as well. When I say both, of course, there are 3 of them. That doesn't really help, does it? But the one that counts is the one that's leading the class. Rino Mastronardi up to get this 4th place overall as the P3 runners come in to make their pit stops. Surely he's coming in soon. He started from pole in class, but he's really got a tidy advantage over Murad Sultanov. In fact, Sultanov in 2nd of the class has just come in to make his pit stop. So surely next time around it will be Mastronardi's turn, but what a drive he's put in.
No, really impressive. Turned a lot of heads already this early on in the season, Mastronardi. And he and Giacomo Puccini could be quite a combination for the season. So 3 LMP3s out front, then a GT3 car, 4th overall. Big lock up there for the race leader, Rory Penton. We're still waiting for Rory's pit stop. And this is fine, because he's obviously offering enough pace to be out front comfortably, finding more and more speed as the car gets lighter and burns more fuel. Of course. The other thing to worry about, though, potentially is, you know, if the fuel mileage is questionable in these cars, is done the out lap prior to, you know, the dummy grid, then the lap behind the safety car. And we've had nearly an hour's running as well. So Rory will need to be mindful that we're getting very much towards the vapours here, and it's going to have to do another lap, another stint rather, on the same amount of fuel. And as a matter of course, we'll have to stop for a second mandatory pit stop as per Bulletin 3 that was issued earlier on today.
Well, I'm just going to own up to something. When I was looking at Rory when he just had his moment, the car didn't seem to be picking up enormously well, but that's probably because he'd had the moment. But I was thinking, has he run a lap too long? Yeah. Another car that's still out there, effectively, even though it's had its drive-through penalties, Daniel Karvitz is up into 3rd place overall, not quite matching the pace of Andy Merrick, but going faster than Penton. So Penton, not long ago, his advantage was 16 seconds. It's halved. It's 8 seconds over Andy Merrick and another 12 seconds back to Karvitz, but both of them are quicker than him. Now Rino Mastronardi comes in from 4th place overall, by far the leader in the GT3 class. And again, looking at the pace, when you've had the driver change, what's the new driver going to do? Lawrence Hall, very impressive for DKR Engineering, and Ben Barnicoat also really flying as soon as he got into the 69 Cool Racing car that Maurice Smith did such a fine opening stint in. So these could be drivers who are heading towards the podium.
Rino really couldn't be much more on his marks there. That was a perfect drive into the yellow taped box. Has had much practice, I'm sure, through the course of the week, with a bit of testing at the start of this week in the south of France as well. And the other race leader, the overall race leader, Rory Penton, also in on the same lap. So Rino Mastronardi in car number 8 to hand over to his teammate Giacomo Puccini, who is the gold-graded Italian. And now we get to sit back and enjoy Matthias Kaiser, who is the Liechtensteiner, silver-graded, joining forces with Rory Penton at Graf. See how he gets on.
Great little battle between Barnicoat and Hoare. They will be definitely going to the sharp end of the field. Immediately Lawrence Hoare set the fastest lap of the race, better than anything that Andy Merrick had done by a small margin. But almost matching to within a few thousandths was Ben Barnicoat. But importantly for Barnicoat, he is ahead of Hoare. There's only a whisker between them, but they are really impressive at the start of this, the second stint, for each of those cars.
Now you might be thinking, problem for the Ferrari. No, don't worry, we're just allowing the clock to tick by because it's a minimum timed pit stop, and the car has to be in the pit lane for 2 minutes and 30 seconds, irrespective of how efficient Iron Lynx are. And that looked to be, well, a pit stop that was done in a metronomic fashion driver in, new tyres bolted on, and then you just stare at the car and make sure that visually it's all fine. Wait for the time to tick by. The lollipop man then will release. It's all on his or her stopwatch, and then the car will venture towards the end of the pit lane. One or two teams have cut things very close to the 150-second time limit, minimum pit stop time. There's 2 minutes and 30 displayed in the penultimate column on our timing and scoring. One or two others playing it safe with 2:33s, 2:36s here and there too. As long as you are 2:30 or more, or slower, that's absolutely fine. And that Ferrari's back on the move now. Lights flashing though from a United Autosports car, so Giacomo Puccini needs to be careful not to cross the blend line, and he's very neat and tidy into turn one.
Well, keeping out of the way there of the race leader, of course, Andy Merrick can go a little bit longer because he took over that car. It's already served one pit stop, the race leading 24, but Daniel Schneider will have to get back in and complete the race. Another driver just getting in time, has already served a drive-through penalty, is Daniel Kalvitz. He'll hand over the 55 Rinaldi Racing Duquesne to Alexander Matchell, another driver who's crossing over from GT Racing to LMP3 prototypes. And he went very well this morning too.
Just over an hour gone. This is the order. 30 laps in the book, and Andy Merrick's the race leader for United Autosports car 24. He was put in that car much earlier than we were expecting during the safety car, but they have served their 2 minutes and 30-second pit stop, so the next one can be as quick as they want. Rinaldi Racing second, CD Sport third, with Geoffrey Donada taking that car over. Matthias Kaiser is fourth, and then it's Ben Barnicoat who will fly, be assured of that, in the Cool Racing 69 car. Laurence Hoare, Dino Lunardi, Gary Hauser, Moritz Krantz and Wayne Boyd complete the top 10. Then it's Alex Mortimer for Grain Market, MV2S, a new team for 2020. Bruce Giuliani now installed into the 27 car. Garrett Grist runs in 10th. Then the GT3s still being led by Giacomo Puccini, because his pit stop put that car on a level playing field with everybody else. So everyone in the GT3 field of the remaining runners have now done a single pit stop, and they don't have to pit again, remember, because fuel mileage not a question in GT3. So Giacomo Puccini leads the class from Paolo Roberti for Kessel Racing. Third is Andrea Puccini, and fourth Ollie Hancock's Kessel Racing Ferrari number 50. 55 minutes on the clock, but there's been so much happening in the opening hour and 5. Daniel Kalvitz had a killer getaway, but it was too good, and he was judged to be leading the race by the start line. He hadn't got pole position earlier in the day though, so that would be an automatic drive-through. Good little move up the inside of Jean Gloria, but only because he started out of position. Everybody else just about making it safely through turns 1 and 2, although it was busy in the queue. And what about Nicola Morlini having to start the car from the pit lane, and not only that, but a full lap down. And worse was to come after this incident, which involved Steve Parrow and the clash with the United Autosports car. But as Steve rejoined right into the path of Nicola Morlini, who had nowhere to go, ripping the front left wheel off the car, that was Nicola Morlini's reaction. And fairly understandable. Steve Parrow stayed in the car for a little while longer. TFT's Porsche ground to a halt behind the safety car, and that was the last we were to see of Nicky Leutwiler. Sadly, no appearance of Julian Andlauer later on in the race either, who's a real talent. Side by side at the restart, and Tony Wells was under an awful lot of pressure from Rory Penttinen, who eventually would go on to lead the race. Penttinen very nearly didn't get his car stopped into turn 1, right round the outside of Tony Wells, who got out of the throttle sensibly because he was running the risk of going straight to the scene of the accident. Daniel Kalvitz did eventually serve his drive-through penalty. They couldn't do a time pit stop during that. Of course, that must come later. And second place, Mikhail Broniszewski retiring on the start-finish straight. Jean Gloria had a moment as well when he was leading, a little bit over-exuberant into Double Droite de Beausset, and he lost 8 seconds as a result of that. Into the right-hander again at Beausset was a nice, neat and tidy move from Kalvitz to pick off a place. And the Ferraris, not mentioned a great deal about the GT3 class, but that's Iron Lynx all the way so far, thanks to Rino Mastronardi's opening stint, and now Giacomo Puccini has taken that car over. Andy Merrick leads the LMP3 element after he was put into the 24 car fairly early on. That means we need another dose of Daniel Schneider before the checkered flag, and we're now back to live action with a clash for the Mercedes alongside the DKR engineering car. And that's done significant damage to the Mercedes, but what about the former race leader, now in the hands of Laurence Hoare? Is the front right wheel off that car of the Mercedes? No, but it's done significant damage to the sill behind the front wheel, and the Mercedes sort of weaving around and just collided with the side of the DKR engineering machine. A strange old incident, Bruce Jones.
Really very strange there indeed. I think he just started his stint, just getting his eye into what's happening, but things are changing very fast. Andy Merrick is still flying at the front of the race. He's got to come in, but it just goes to prove, a moment's inattention and it could really undo the good work. But talking of good work, Geoffrey Denarder is doing a stormingly good job. That CD Sport car, started by Jacques Wolf, one of the first cars into the pit lane. And he's even faster than Ben Barnicoat, who's closing him, or was trying to close him down. There's a 23-second gap between them. I thought he's going to be a sitting duck, but Denarder's flying. And Andy Merrick, of course, staying out as long as he can. He's trying to keep on pressing to build an advantage. He's still got to serve a pit stop, but as you pointed out, they did one very early on, served the full 2 minutes 30 seconds. The second one could be a short one before he hands it back to Daniel Schneider, but Merrick will be coming in soon, whereas Denarder should be there towards the finish of the race now.
Yeah, not only will they have to change drivers, they'll have to give it a little boost of fuel as well, but probably only a handful of seconds before they can send that car into the race again. By the way, just nothing left of Eric Maurice's front right Michelin tyre, cut to shreds after that contact with Laurence Roux. And that was why I was slightly confused, because they'd already put a new tyre on it by the time we caught sight of it in the pit lane. But quick pit work, Eric Maurice taking his time to get up to speed of the race, which has been frenetic from the start. And yes, just drifting from one side of the road to the other, and sadly clashing with Laurence Roux's car. Roux, though, stays in fourth position so far, feeling no ill effects of that glancing blow.
50 minutes remaining in this race, and a little bit of small change as well. 1 minute 49.068, fastest lap of the race by the number 24 United Autosports Ligier. Andy Merrick really probably only has a handful more minutes in that car, but he's doing everything he can to stretch his advantage over Geoffrey Denarder. And now, this time around, Ben Barnicoat starting to make inroads on Denarder, but it's a sizable gap he's trying to peg back, about 22 seconds. So Denarder, CD Sport number 6, suddenly looking very good indeed.
Yeah, Barnicoat with a 150.1. The car ahead, Denarder at 151.4, but a mightily impressive time. Fastest lap of the race so far from Andy Merrick, a 149 flat for his 24 car. Way out wide there for the GT3 leader. Can't do that on too many occasions. Giacomo Piccini, he'll be pinged for track limits. Might just be a warning if he does that a couple of times, but if it becomes a regular feature, then drive-throughs are a potential. As the 8 car is comfortably ahead. Got the cushion of Nick Adcock's CD Sport LMP3 car between the GT3 race leader and Paolo Roberti in second place. So total those times together, something like a 17-second advantage. Piccini back to Roberti.
He's not in a position where he has to really take risks, must be said. But anyhow, feeling his way in, he is quick. He's already his second flying lap in that car is that car's fastest lap in the race. First to second, it's still, we're just waiting for the gap for the CD Sport car with Geoffrey Denarder to come through. But Geoffrey didn't even race last year, so he's come back with a bang.
Yes.
Last competed in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo a handful of years in 2018.
Okay.
So he's finding his way back into racing, doing a really good job.
Yeah, and you must shake off the rust very quickly indeed, as I say, to get up to the speed of this fraught encounter. But very much at home, it appears. Geoffrey Denarder in second position, and Ben Barnicoat is lapping more quickly, but there is just over 20 seconds to try and find.
Just looking for traffic. A lot of blue on our screen, which means the second driver taking over the car is going better than the driver in the first stint. But it's Andy Merrick leading the way, still lapping constantly. 1 minute 49, 1 minute 49. Geoffrey Denarder's lap times are now 1 minute 50. But Ben Barnicoat closing down. He's taken another second out of him. He's in third place for Cool Racing. So it's United Autosports, CD Sport and Cool Racing. And Laurence Roux can stay there or thereabouts, but he's now fallen to 3 seconds off the tail of Barnicoat. I thought that was a battle that would go all the way through. Don't forget though, Roux had that collision with the EDEX Sport Mercedes. Maybe that's given him a little bit of damage, because he was swapping laps with Barnicoat, a tenth of a second here or there. Merrick is in from the lead of the race, so we will have that driver change back to Daniel Schneider.
Yeah, fuel going in, slightly more fuel than I was expecting actually, although bear in mind they've still got to do 45 minutes or so, so no chance of United, he says, running out of fuel because they've decided to split the race almost into 3/3 here. Daniel Schneider, the opening stint, Andy Merrick, as they reworked the strategy because of the safety car, Andy Merrick taking charge during that caution period. That's when they did their long pit stop. This pit stop can be as quick as they wish, but obviously the right amount of fuel's got to go in along with the driver change. So fuel nozzle now is disconnected and they can send the 24 car back into the race as the Mercedes from EDEC Sport, a team name well known in European Le Mans Series circles because they were the 2019 LMP2 champions, overall title winners with Memo Rojas, Paul Huchatin and Paul Lafargue. 2/3 of that team back again to defend the ELMS title, but nice to have an extra EDEC Sport car in the GT3 ranks of Michelin Le Mans Cup. So round the outside, very nearly there was a move there from the number 10 Nielsen Racing entry, deciding that discretion was the better part of valour though. Garrett Grist, as we head to Hayley Edmonds with more news from the pit lane.
I'm joined here by Nicolas Menassion, the sporting director of IDEC Sport, who's going to tell us about what happened, so the incident on the track between your driver Eric Maes and Laurent Hour, the number 3 car from Di Chiara Engineering.
What happened, I think, is a little bit of a racing incident. I haven't got enough, I don't know enough yet to go into detail about what happened. You know, all I know is that it's a shame because we had a very good pace with Patrice. We had a very good first stint, and it's a shame to have a quick incident like this, you know. So we lost a lot of time, and we had 2 bronze on the car. So we're trying to do the best we can with this. We as well had some incident in practice, you know. So we had to rebuild the car. We did lots of work. So great work by the team. Unfortunate incident. I think we need to ask Eric what happened more into detail after the race.
Have you spoken to Eric?
No, the engineer is doing that right now, and we just leave them to be now, and then we will see what happened at the end of the race.
Okay, thank you very much, Nicolas.
Thank you.
And it looked like it was just the tyre that copped the punishment, and actually the bodywork around the wheel arch wasn't too badly affected. I'm not even sure the dive plane on that front right corner was plucked out of the car either, so Maurice got away with one there, and let's keep our fingers crossed that Laurent Hour's not losing too much speed either. There are double wave yellows out on track at the moment, Bruce. Looks like turn 10. Still trying to identify which car it is.
Gary Hauser in the Racing Experience car, started by Yuri Wagner, stopped. That's brought out, of course, turn 10, very quick part of the corner. You've gone through Scene, and then it's the double right-hander that follows. But suddenly, we're getting gaggles of cars. It's funny in any sort of sports car race. You have periods where they're sort of running with space, and now we've got a sextet of cars weaving its way through that very tricky sequence. Turns 3, 4 and 5 with the Rinaldi Racing car. We've had the driver change there, car number 55, trying to work his way back to the front, but it's now Alexander Matchell, and he was getting very sideways as he was trying to sort it out at turn 5, but suddenly it's almost like the first lap all over again, and he's fighting very, very hard indeed with Wayne Boyd, and the Ulsterman is going past him. Better exit from turn 6 and 7. Not quite past him on the Mistral straight, but now he's just got his nose in front. They're side by side, but Boyd has just put his nose, so more improvement for United Autosports there, picking their way up the order. They're leading the race with Andy Merrick still listed as the driver after 2 pit stops.
They were bottled up a little bit through 6 and 7 by Ollie Hancock, who is no slouch when it comes to driving a Ferrari, and he will have been going through that part of the track as quick as he could in the 50 car. Ollie taking that car over from John Hartshorn after a solid opening stint, and then they could finally streak past the Kessel Racing Ferrari onto the Mistral straight. But yes, there was definite pressure from Wayne Boyd. He spotted his opportunity and got ahead of Alexander Matchell as they headed into senior corner. There's now a rather large gap ahead of, actually it's not large at all, 1.6 seconds to Moritz Krantz. The thing that's confusing me is that Wayne Boyd is perilously close to falling off the lead lap, but he's definitely got competition just ahead of him on the road. It also includes Dino Lunardi.
Right, we've got Andy Merrick back into the pits. This is the 3rd pit stop for that car. I don't understand what went wrong. Was Daniel Schneider not ready to get in when he came in? Because Merrick went back out. I was waiting for the thing to flick over. Now jumping into the car is the Brazilian racer Daniel Schneider, feeding him through the small gap to put him into the cockpit. But the stunning drive from Andy Merrick, I don't understand why he stayed on board. Can you get your head around that one?
Well, unless they were concerned that that Merrick hadn't been at the wheel for long enough. Remember, the time in the pit lane doesn't count towards your drive time, and if they've slightly miscalculated and brought the car in a lap early, it might have been 54 minutes and 50 seconds, and you've got to send him out for another lap to make sure that the minimum drive time is met.
Okay, that was my fear as well. So into the lead of the race goes Geoffrey Denarder, car number 6 for CD Sport. He's about 20 seconds up the road.
So that's really annoying, if that is the question, and that is the problem rather for United Autosports. And Schneider's belt's now being done up for him. They've just given it a little blast of fuel again. I suppose why not, from a belt braces perspective. But Andy Merrick's supreme drive now not necessarily going to get the result that it deserves as Daniel Schneider rejoins the race in car 24. The number 6 entry from CD Sport is being driven by Geoffrey Denarder, as we've mentioned many times, leading the race, 20 seconds pretty much ahead of Ben Barnicoat. Laurence Hoare maybe carrying a little bit of damage. I'm sure the setter of the car's been knocked about a bit after that sideways glance from Eric Maurice. And a significantly weighted Mercedes, about 1,300 kilos, these GT3 cars, so he will have felt that. And it was the Mercedes that came worse off from that clash, but the Laurence Hoare car will not be handling as well as it did in free practice earlier on in the weekend. 41 minutes to go. Giacomo Piccini, serene out front, enjoying a early Saturday evening drive here, and his advantage is significant.
Yeah, it's 21 seconds over Paolo Ruberti. You'd expect Ruberti to be at the top of the pile, but that driver pairing of Rino Mastronardi and Giacomo Piccini, yeah, add that up, it's likely to be in the lead. But so many buts at this point in the race. I really expected Ben Barnicoat to take chunks out of Geoffrey Denarder. He's taking tenths of a second here or there. Geoffrey didn't race last year, raced European Lamborghini Series in 2018, several years in the French Porsche Carrera Cup, finishing, really well in the championship, second overall in 2017, but he doesn't have a lot of sports car experience, and here he is leading the race, sucking out the pressure. We've got only 40 minutes remaining in this 2-hour race, and things going very right indeed for CD Sport. Well, at least for one of their cars. Nick Adcock is down in 14th place in the other, but in fact, in the pit lane is CD Sport, Geoffrey Denarder. Look at the timing screen, look at the other screen, and one is moving and the other isn't.
Yeah, so back in for its second stop. This is the secondary mandatory stop for that extra burst of fuel to make sure the car gets to the finish. This is just a one-off scenario, by the way, or it should be, and Orica can sort out the fuel consumption of the brand new Nissan engine in time for Spa-Francorchamps. There's a firm instruction on the third bulletin of the weekend from the ACO about that. 69 car heading into the right-hander at turn 5 is your new race leader now. Ben Barnicoat kind of inherits it a little bit, but that car's only made one stop of the two and leads Laurence Hoare by just under 5 seconds.
Right, if you're just coming into the broadcast, you've missed a really exciting first hour and a bit of this race. Of course, in previous 2-hour rounds of the Michelin Le Mans Cup, the P3 cars pit the once because of over-hungry fuel consumption here at the opening round in 2020. They're told they have to do 2 mandatory pit stops, but of course that doesn't mean you do a third of the race, and then run to the finish. They're trying to do things differently. Of course, every team manager worth his salt will try and outthink the opposition. Some of them have had to come in early, Johnny, because they've had damage and things that need sorting out. We'll probably, if it is on a handicap race, it should all come good at the end. So who is going to be at front? But that was when this is all over. But that was a really good stint from Geoffrey Denarder. Ben Barnicoat was just under 20 seconds down on him. Barnicoat now leads the race, but of course he owes us a second pit stop.
And there were question marks regarding the car in third position as to how far it could go into the race prior to its first pit stop. It got beyond the hour from memory with Rory Penttinen at the wheel, because there'd been some safety car, quite a lot of it, so it would have saved some fuel there, and they were able to make the stop and hand over to Matthias Kaiser. That car's still only done one stop, and the longer of the two mandatory pit stops. This is a one-off affair for the season, and the first one of those stops has to be 2.5 minutes. They've done that one, So the next one can be as quick as it takes to put the required amount of fuel in. On the move again is former race leader Geoffrey Donada. Slipped back outside the top 10 though as a result of the second stop. From a long way back comes the United Autosport car, which is running in 7th position and has Wayne Boyd at the wheel. He's pursuing Moritz Krantz, 8/10 of a second away. Manages to get one of those GT3 cars now out of the way, so there's clear line of sight.
Well, I think it comes as no surprise that Wayne Boyd is putting on a bit of a starring show. We saw him take pole in the P3 class for European Le Mans Series race in the quickfire qualifying early today. And of course, he's having to make his way forward. Moritz Krantz will be picked off because last time around Boyd was took a chunk out of him. But it's also about how they get past the GT class cars, because they can, if you get a really good move, you can gain. If you just have to bide your time, everything you've gained over the previous few laps will go away. But Boyd, well, with a driver of his calibre, you do expect him to get the moments and pick them right. But what you lose at one point, you can gain in another. Traffic will always be a feature. It's where you hit it.
Dino Lunardi arriving now into the double right at Beausset. Car 98 is only 1.3 seconds off the back of Matthias Kaiser in the Graf car with the red door mirrors. Mercedes eDEX Sport back in the pit lane. This is the car that had the clash with the DKR Engineering prototype that now runs second. And it's just a drive-through for the 17. No, he's going to the team. I think we had a message on the screen about a drive-through penalty for eDEX Sport. This is to switch drivers back again? Or does Eric Maurice have some trouble with the belts, perhaps?
Well, I don't know, but the team manager of car 17, the eDEX Sport car, had been called to race control about 10 minutes ago, so one presumes it was simply down to the clash with Lawrence Hoare, who'd only just taken over the car that's now in second place for DKR Engineering, their black and orange Duquesne. That's 5.9 seconds down on Ben Barnicoat. Ben Barnicoat has just been able to edge away. Don't forget, when they came out of their pit stops, which were at a similar stage in the race, it was less than half a second between them. So it's been advantage Barnicoat at the moment. And much like United Autosports, Andy Merrick, when chasing for the lead and then getting into the lead, it's all about building as much of a buffer as you can. And that car, for Ben Barnicoat, still owes us a pit stop.
Information to the pit lane. Information to the pit lane. Stop and go penalty of 3 minutes on car 23 for causing a collision with car 66 at T14. 3 minute stop and go penalty on car 23 for causing a collision with car 56 at turn 14.
And that was John Showerman, who was driving at the time the car that Wayne Boyd is now in control of, and clearly Showerman judged to be at fault for the moment with Steve Parrow into Virage Dupont.
Okay, well, we'd pointed the finger at his teammate Daniel Schneider, and we then presumed that was correct because once he'd come in to make a very early pit stop, we thought they might have been looking a bit of front-end damage, so we got the wrong United Autosports car. So all the effort that Wayne Boyd's putting in, he's now up to 7th place, is afraid going to be undone with that 3-minute stop and go penalty. So over and out in this race with half an hour remaining, or 34 minutes remaining. That is going to be very, very tough on them indeed. But that was the car that caused the damage. Car number 23 spinning around Steve Parrow. But of course he caused far greater damage when he rejoined straight into the path of Nicolas Molini.
And an update on the latest stop for eDEX Sport with Eric Maurice staying at the wheel. It was a 49-second stop, so as we said, pretty quick. It required a run into the pit box, and the car went up on its jacks, you may remember. Then the door was opened by the team members, and Eric Maurice, almost was a belt adjustment, or perhaps he couldn't gain access to his water bottle, something niggly, and that was solved presumably, and the car was sent back out again. Although there's still a black cloud hanging over Eric Maurice's head, because the team manager for eDEX Sport has been sent to race control. Surely that can only be about the clash with Lawrence Hoare. A little over half an hour to go. Ben Barnicoat now leading the way for Cool Racing. So, nightmarish start for the sister car. Couldn't get it out of the pit lane until a full lap had gone by. Then that nasty looking crash involving Steve Parrow and a questionable rejoin. But the other car is leading, and it's got Ben Barnicoat at the wheel. Maybe a small smile is appearing on the face of Nicolas Lapierre once again.
We can't see it, he's wearing a face mask because everyone has to up and down the pit lane, but Barnicoat's just put in that car's fastest lap. I think the overall fastest lap, still the possession of Andy Merrick, 1 minute 49.0 seconds. That was some 8 or 9 laps ago. But, of course, tyre wear is beginning to become a factor. This circuit resurfaced in the last 12 months, and it's certainly causing a few concerns for some of the crews. Double waved yellow at turn number 5.
Yeah, and these cars are nowhere near turn 5. It's a stray bollard, it would appear. Very brave Marshall there, running a long way from post out towards the scene of the crime. Covered by double waved yellows, it may well be. The cars are still arriving at the scene there very quickly indeed. So, the cars then heading back across the line. 32 minutes still to go. And heading into turns 1 and 2 now, the battle between Motorsport 98 and the Graf car number 26, Matthias Kaiser.
Kaiser fighting very, very hard indeed. Just want to highlight that battle between Barnicot and her, the first 2 cars in the race. As I said, they were about half a second apart after their pit stop and the driver change. They've still got one more pit stop to make, but 7.3 seconds to the good now is the advantage for the race leader. So Barnicot doing a fabulous job. Morris Smith in the pit lane, his teammate will be very, very pleased indeed. He had a great opening stint right in the thick of the action. This race is one that seesawed backwards and forwards through the course of the event. Of course, we had the lead taken at the start from 3rd on the grid by Rinaldi Racing, new to Prototype Racing. Brilliant start, but just a shade too brilliant from Daniel Karwitz. But Alex Matschul is fighting his way back. He's a minute down on the race leader though, so it's not going to be glory. It could have been for the new team. So is it going to go to Cool Racing? We had thought they might be starting from the front row with the sister car, but that had to start from pit lane 1 lap after everyone else. And so it didn't look good for Cool Racing. That car was then involved in a collision with another car that was rejoining the circuit. That's ruled them out. But Ben Barnicot, building on Morris Smith's example, doing a fantastic job. And another person who's doing a brilliant, brilliant job is Dino Lunardi in the Motorsport 98 car number. Just seen that going past Moritz Krantz. So that's another car that could be working its way towards a potential podium finish. This is the opening round. Pit stop for car number 6 under investigation. Unfortunately, that was a car that was leading the race, Geoffrey Denarder. It does seem you get to the front of the race, you have problems. We saw the DKR engineering car in the hands of Jean Gloria looking for a glorious return, but unfortunately he had a spin. That's why that car's back down in 2nd place. So this is a race that ebbs and flows at the front. Well, why not make it exciting for the opening race of the season? And of course, we were expecting when we came here just 1 pit stop being mandatory for the P3 cars, the fast cars in this field, but they have to go twice for pit stops in this race because of over-hungry fuel consumption. It's a twist. Who's going to get it right?
Over the line then goes the 55 car of Rinaldi Racing, the black and orange flag again being waved in the direction of car 7 about the rear tail light. Well, I assume they attempted to fix that down at Nielsen, but that's been a problem since lap 3 or 4 when the clash was made and the cheese wedge became first of all dislodged, then it was being towed round by a cable and a little bit of metal work, and finally it fell off. They have reapplied a spare, but that's now starting to work its way loose as well, hence the reason for the black and orange mechanical warning flag. The car judged to be unsafe and a danger to others in the race.
So where is this race going to land? The top half dozen cars all owe us a 2nd pit stop. So at the moment it's Ben Barnicot leading by 8.4 seconds from Lawrence Hoare. Then another 21 seconds back to Dino Lunardi in the Motorsport 98 car. We've just been seeing doing some great overtaking, going past Matthias Kaiser. Can anybody else come into the mix? And don't forget, we've got Daniel Schneider. He's fallen down to 6th place, the car that was run by Andy Merrick, but that's had 3 pit stops, possibly one too many. But he doesn't owe us any more visits to the pit, so that will bring that back into the mix. Oh, it's going to be tight all the way to the finish here. Certainly for the bottom place on the podium. The top 2 may be able to pull their way clear, but it's complicated.
It was ever thus in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. It's just become a better and better championship with every year, really, and the grid continues to grow. Races like this can only generate more interest. And you never quite know. You start to spot a pattern in one of these races and then it'll change 10 or 15 times through the course. Great stuff, and still 30 minutes to enjoy. 44 laps to go, and the gap at the head of the order is 44 laps completed, and the gap at the head of the order is 8.5 seconds. Ben Barnicoat back to Laurence Roux. Dino Lunardi at the sharp end going great guns too. But also fabulous to have Ligier and Duquesne represented at the sharp end, when certain tracks last year did favour what was called in those days the Norma M30. That's become known as the Duquesne machine, of course. Other tracks favoured the Ligier. They seem to be level pegging this weekend. Ferrari seems to be the car to have, though, in the GT3 element of the race. 4 of them out front. In fact, top 5, all 488 GT3s. Giacomo Piccini for Iron Lynx, car number 8, leading by this comfortable margin of very nearly 22 seconds back to Paolo Roberti for Kessel Racing, number 67.
Interesting to see. We've got a handful of drivers in this field that are sort of returning to the racing scene, and one of them is Bruce Giuani. He's just behind Alexander Matchel as they go up towards Scene. They're fighting over 8th place overall, but the MV2S car with Giuani, who last raced effectively was in 2011, but his last full season was when he raced at Pescarolo Sport back in 2009. So he's not lost any of his form, and you can imagine just the frustration trying to get this season underway for him and get racing. But he's enjoying himself very much. Car number 27, lapping yet bang on the pace of those at the tail end of the top 6. Welcome back, Bruce.
Michel Gatting still 5th in the GT3 part of the race, just ahead of Eric Maurice, whose recovery drive continues. And sadly, 5 retirements in this event so far. Nicola Molini and Steve Parrow's cars no longer taking part for obvious reasons, as Nielsen Racing take a second attempt now to fix the legality panel, and trying various ways of actually drilling new holes now, maybe to apply fresh bolts and make sure it doesn't fall off. But this is just nightmarish stuff, not a job you want to be doing at speed. And it started so well for Tony Wells in the number 7 car. He was scrapping away for the top 3 and 4 positions, but Colin Noble will be mightily frustrated now behind the wheel of that Duquesne.
Well, particularly Johnny, because just on the lap before he came in, he set that car's fastest lap. So yeah, he was trying to pick up the pace.
He's a real talent, but very rarely gets a chance to show it on the result sheet, sadly.
Geoffrey Denarder, car number 6, they had to come into the pits all over again. That's really plummeted them to the tail of the field. They have served 3 pit stops. The ones at the sharp end of the field, the top 1, 2, 3, 5 cars have only served 1. They will owe us 1 more stop. Geoffrey Denarder and CD Sport now would have hopefully finished their visits to the pits, but this is an unusual race in that so many cars that have featured at the really sharp end have had a little problem, or a big one. For a significant chunk of people involved in the race, it is the latter. Into Beausset corner goes the scrapping MV2S and Rinaldi racing cars. Bruce Giuani could bow to the pressure, but I don't think he will, to Alexander Matchel. But again, well, he's only just passed him, so hopefully Giuani will go away. But they're both learning as they go. Giuani just learning what it's like to race a racing car after effectively a decade on the sidelines, and for Alexander Matchel, he's learning how to drive a prototype, and I think doing a very, very good job on his first showing.
Race leader arriving at senior corner, and the smoke's kicked up as the car grounds out again over the curb. Ben Barnicoat is on the door handles here. He's pushing on. 10 seconds now, the advantage over Laurence Roux, who is a real talent, and remember, now the defending co-champion in this particular event, the Michelin Le Mans Cup he won last year. DKR Engineering have got some competition, no doubt about it, for 2020. Cool Racing, only 1 car, 1 bullet in the gun, effectively. Question marks as to how well the 37 might have done as well. So that'll be one to keep our eyes peeled for later in the season. Speaking of which, team manager of car 37 and Nicola Molini are now being summoned to race control. So presumably they want the side of the story from Molini and the incident involving Steve Parrow, put that car out of the race.
You raised the point earlier, Johnny, that there might have been, well, there would have been a waved yellow, and before turn 14 we haven't had enough camera angles for us to make conclusions. It's not up to us though, it's up to race control. One thing that's indisputable is the fact that Giacomo Piccini is sitting on a very tidy lead, nearly 21 seconds in the lead of the GT3 class So Iron Lynx, big smile on their face today. Kessel racing, Paolo Roberti chasing hard, in fact taking another half second. But look, the clock at the top of the screen's got ever smaller numbers on it, 22 minutes 40 seconds till the checkered flag can be unfurled. So you'd have to say for the number 8 Iron Lynx car, it's looking very, very good indeed.
More drive-through penalties, this time for the number 6 CD Sport car and the 17 entry, which is the Edex Sport Mercedes. This is for pit stop infringements. So did they cut the 2 minutes and 30 second time limit too short? Or were there too many team personnel across the white line? That's tricky to tell. That's very much an umbrella term, pit stop infringement. Can include all manner of things. But they are going to be drive-throughs, which will cost you a good 45 seconds to your race time. Out of turns 1 and 2 go Daniel Schneider and Bruce Giuani. Giuani again applying the pressure to, and in fact goes past Daniel Schneider almost as if he's not there. That was the former Andy Merrick car. Schneider started it, Welshman in for a decent stint. Actually slightly longer than United Autosports were expecting as well, because remember there was that hiccup when Merrick brought the car in, they filled it with fuel but then sent him back out again for a lap before Daniel Schneider could take over. So really the 24 car should be much further up the order than it is.
Yeah, at the moment, as you said, just dropped back down to 8th place, but that has done all its pit stops as far as I understand, so that should bounce back up the order all over again. In fact, what we've got up in 6th place, the first having done only one pit stop as well, is Alex Mortimer, the Grain Market car that started right down among the GT3 runners. So that's been a good run for them, but of course it's all going to come undone because some of the rivals behind them on the timesheets have served their second or even third pit stop. So it's a real mix at the moment. But I think looking at the drivers on the field, the driver setting the fastest times, well, it has been Ben Barnicoat in the lead of the race. He has the race's fastest lap. Was the only driver to go under 1 minute 49 seconds for a lap. Lawrence Hoare, just under 10 seconds down in second place. So they are the quick two at the moment, and they are the first 2 cars on the track. So that sort of adds up.
Just over 20 minutes to go. Still, I sense this race has a little bit more to give here, as into turns 4, 5 and 6 go the battling duo of Matthias Kaiser and also involved the United Autosports car there, trying to gain a lap back potentially. Let's have a look. That's the
is that the Wayne Boyd car fighting up from the tail of the field? He's the other fastest driver in the field at the moment. Yeah, one of only 3 drivers under 1 minute 50.
There you go. So there are laps between Kaiser and Wayne Boyd. Confused me completely there. 2 laps down Wayne Boyd and trying to recover after he had to come in and serve that penalty. 3 minutes, judged to be at fault. His teammate with the clash with Steve Parrott. As now through 6 and 7 and onto the Mistral straight those cars go. Bruce Giuani into a bit of clear air finally once again. Alex Mortimer, is he going to get Alex just yet? It was 9/10 of a second through the last split, and it's much larger now to the car in front. Grey Market Racing being driven by Alex Mortimer in 6th position. Bruce Giuani doing a splendid job for MV2S Racing, car 27.
Yeah, 27 still getting closer and closer to Alex Mortimer, so the Ligier will be working its way past soon. Good, solid stint here from Bruce Giuani. Not just solid, feisty.
And about a second between them as they work their way through the left-hander of Garlabin. While in the background, Alexandra Matchell is still taking the fight to Daniel Schneider. So that's not over yet for 8th and 9th places. Much bigger gap then back to Canadian Garrett Grist and the Nielsen Racing number 10 car.
Just as Lawrence Hoare suddenly puts in the fastest first sector of anyone, the pace of our race leader Ben Barnicoat, it might have been a bad lap, but he's been doing 1 minute 49, 1 minute 49. He's at 1 minute 51.7, and his first part of this lap is 7/10 slower than her. So her is going to be closing in. Is there a problem for the race leader? Cool Racing. It's been a cruel day for Cool so far, but surely it's not going to come unravelled with 18 minutes remaining in this race. I'll keep an eye on the next sector split, but yeah, I think it's more than traffic there.
Yeah, there's plenty happening with cars on different trajectories through the race as well. Their strategy has had to change.
Into the pits. Into the pits he comes.
Okay, so Barnicoat in then for that final fill-up of fuel. He'll stay at the wheel, he'll attach the fuel nozzle, but not for long, because only just over 15 minutes worth of fuel that needs to go in. Very interested to know how many litres were left in that tank. I don't think that they don't need to run it too close. Cool Racing in a good spot. Bear in mind, Laurence Roux, who now takes the race lead, does have to stop again. So it looks pretty bad for Cool Racing. It will all come back to them now, assuming Ben Barnicoat can keep it neat and tidy on the outlap and beyond.
So just when Laurence Roux was needing clear track to try and eke as much of an advantage as he could, he got a couple of the GT3 Ferraris in front of him down between turns 2, 3, 4 and 5, and that delayed him very slightly. But the time I'm just going to note down, Johnny, when he comes back out, Ben Barnicoat, how long his combined time in the pit was. That was a 40-second in and out for that second stop. But I'll try and remember that for the next few minutes.
Write it down. Got plenty of paper in front of you. Rattling over the curbs there. Former race leader Ben Barnicoat now back in the race. He'll feel the difference in physics of this car now with a little bit more fuel on board. He will have kept the same tyres though, as they have worn with the driver, and he can get back into the rhythm very quickly indeed. Can't quite attack the first few corners of this lap as readily as he was towards the end of the previous stint, because the tyres will have lost a shade of their temperature. And in second position now, Dino Lunardi, also one to benefit, but this car will have to stop one more time before the checkered flag. So Barnicoat did incredibly well in the previous stint, his car only dropping to third. He should re-inherit the lead when all of this unwinds. Matthias Kaiser for Graf Racing in the third of the Ligiers, but fourth place, is only a handful of seconds away from Ben Barnicoat now. But Ben will be aware of his presence just off the rear bumper. Moritz Krantz for Milner Motorsport remaining in fifth spot, ahead of Alex Mortimer and Bruce Giuani. Giacomo Piccini leading the way in the GT3 class, and margin coming down a little bit. We've got three Italians out front in three very Italian Ferraris with Italian and Swiss teams represented, but Iron Lynx are a brand new entity for this season. Kessel Racing, well known for their automatic invitation to Le Mans because of success in the Michelin Le Mans Cup in the past. It'd be great to have those cars a little bit closer for a fair old fight, but I think Piccini's now started to drive within himself, knowing that there are only 15 minutes left on the clock. Yeah, the gap back to Paolo Roberti was about 20 seconds. It's now down to just under 17 and a half. It's sensible pacing. Don't take too many risks. 2-hour race, less than 15 minutes remaining. And that seems sensible, but you don't want to back off too much. You never know what incidents can come your way. But for Iron Lynx, it's been looking brilliant from the outset of this race. Running, of course, the race within a race. GT3 among the LMP3 cars, but really, really solid pairing. Giacomo Piccini building on the stunning work of Rino Mastronardi. Through the fast right-hander at Garlabat, and now Virage du Lac for race leader Laurence Roux. Choosing not to pit on this particular lap, so having to go round at least one more time. Dino Lunardi likewise. I don't see the blue letter P appear next to his name to suggest he's heading for more fuel. We'll have to at some point, as will actually the next three cars behind Ben Barnicoat. So 4th, 5th and 6th in LMP3 still set to make their second mandatory pit stop. That's just a one-off affair after a bulletin was issued earlier on today suggesting it was going to be a bit tight in terms of fuel mileage for this brand new engine for 2020 Nissan design, but Orica prepared that powers all of these LMP3s regardless of them being Duqueine or Ligier. Okay, here's one for you, Johnny. Ben Barnicoat served that 40-second in and out run through the pits for the final pit stop and gets back on track, and he's immediately 0.8 of a second quicker than the race leader Laurence Roux, who still owes us that second and final pit stop in the number 3
Duquesne from DKR Engineering. So this one could tick to the finish, but look, the clock continues to tick itself. 13 minutes remaining until we get to the end of 2 hours. So it's going to be a late race pit stop for the top two cars, Lawrence Hoare and Dino Lunardi, Motorsport 98. That the top Ligier at the moment, but presumably that will then fall back behind Ben Barnicoat in his Cool Racing Ligier. So who's going to be next into the pit lane? And all the Motorsport cars just going back out. That's Moritz Krantz.
Yeah, Krantz returning now onto a busy part of the track, but should be able to get out of the loud pedal to make the rejoin safe. Feed back into the mixture at turn number 1. Meanwhile, rounding Beausset corner is the entry from Cool Racing. And 23 is still the recovering Wayne Boyd, not on the lead lap now after having to soak up a 3-minute time penalty. And that again reminds us in sports car racing might be the infringement that an official has spotted might have nothing to do with you. You take the car over from your teammate's made an error, but it's you that has to cop it. And really unfortunate for Wayne Boyd, who was going great guns at that point and had to break his rhythm, come down pit lane and then frustratingly sit there outside the United Autosports garage for 3 minutes, which must have dragged on so long. But he's got his head down, he's got to instantly forget about that and get back into the race. The overtaking has certainly continued at pace. Unfortunately, it doesn't really mean anything now for that car's position. Wedged down in 16th spot, and behind 4 of the GT3 cars. GT3 still led by Iron Lynx, with Paolo Roberti pedalling very hard indeed. He's about to overtake Nick Adcock actually for 12th position overall. He's got a good 16 seconds to try and find on the race leader. Looking good as a first outing for Iron Lynx, a double podium, most impressive for the Piccini brothers.
It is always sort of an interesting element, isn't it, their race within the race, but I mean it really hasn't been a race within the race because it's been all about that number 8 Ferrari. They built an advantage in the first part of the race. We have to remember we had the safety car period that bunched the field all up again. You'd have to say that without that, Iron Lynx number 8 would be even further ahead because both Rino Mastronardi, well, Rino was in the car at the time with the safety car, but when we had green flag laps, he was the quickest driver in the field in GT3, so it's been thoroughly deserved if they do go on to take victory in this opening round of the championship.
Heading through 4, 5 and 6. The GT3 leader, Singular, about to be overtaken though by the blue and white car of, was it MV2S? No, it wasn't Bruce Giuliani's car. Still, as you can tell, identifying various machines. I think it was Moritz Krantz actually in the colour scheme for Mulner Motorsport. Motorsport 98 finally come in now to serve their second pit stop. 10 minutes on the clock, so not an awful lot of fuel needs to go in. There you go. Nozzle attached, then released. Was there a problem with the fuel going in because the car's not leaving the pit lane? That was puzzling because they don't have to, assuming they've done their long pit stop, they don't have to linger that long in the pit lane. So concerns about Motorsport 98 now, who were third. Matthias Kaiser gets ahead on the road, although that car owes us a pit stop. Alex Mortimer for Grain Market Racing also comes in for that car's second stop. They've definitely done their long one because 2 minutes 30 remains in the penultimate column on our timing screen. Bruce Giuliani therefore is going to gain a position on Alex Mortimer. That'll put Giuliani into 5th place now. And it's all Ligiers apart from the race leader, who is still at Duquesne M30 D08 of Lawrence Hoare.
Well, I'm waiting for him to come in. Maybe the team is as well. Under 9 minutes remaining in this 2-hour race. He's leading by 27.5 seconds over Ben Barnicoat, but Barnicoat has served the pit stop. And Ben's time from going into the pits and coming out was 40 seconds. What's it going to be for Lawrence Hoare? I'm beginning to think it's going to be advantage Barnicoat, because when he's on the track, he's the quickest driver of the front runners.
Yeah. Well, we'll soon find out, because Lawrence Hoare arrives in pit lane now with the Luxembourgish entrant, DKR Engineering. They've not really changed their paint scheme in 3 seasons. Why change a winning formula when they've taken every single title up for grabs in the LMP3 Michelin Le Mans Cup? But what about Ben Barnicoat? Just heading around the final corner now, and across the line, and the 69 car takes the lead now then. Back again. Only now does the number 3 car rejoin. Is it going to be questionable as to whether he gets ahead of Matthias Kaiser? Shouldn't be, because it's about half a minute back again. Kaiser's across the line though to snatch second place, and Laurence Hoare only now at turn number 1. So he has lost out on second. I think Hoare could be, on balance, faster than Matthias Kaiser, but he's got to try and catch and fashion an opportunity to get back in front of the Graf car.
In 7.5 minutes, this is a big ask. For Ben Barnicoat, he's 10.6 seconds clear in the lead of the race, and the key to this is when they started their first stint, both Barnicoat and Hoare, they were half a second apart. Barnicoat just went away, but let us not forget that Laurence Hoare's car was clattered by the EDEX Sport Mercedes. It could have put something a little out of true, because with every lap the advantage was going in the favour of Barnicoat, who was just lapping consistently faster. But look, the clock keeps on counting down for Cool Racing, number 69 car. Maybe Nicolas Lapierre will have a monster smile on his face. The hopes at the start of the race were with the sister car, but that started from the pit lane, had to start a lap and a bit down, and then was involved in the collision. In fact, Lapierre is having to go to see race control about that incident, along with the driver Nicolas Molini. But right now it's swung the other way, so Maurice Smith, American racer, standing in the garage, could be very excited indeed, travelling over to Europe and looking his car, leading by 11 seconds now.
Out of turn 5 goes Daniel Schneider, and just up the road Maurice Krantz in the Mulder Motorsport blue and white. Laurence Hoare 0.9 of a second off the back now of Matthias Kaiser. It was much more of an expected stop for the number 3 car, although actually Dino Lunardi's Motorsport 98 pit stop looked slow. It was 42 seconds in the end. It wasn't too bad, it was just a lot of the guys were staring at the car thinking there was a problem with it. Meanwhile, Matthias Kaiser comes in, so that will switch things around, of course, because Kaiser hadn't yet done his second stop, so swings the pendulum back in the direction of Laurence Hoare.
Well, taking a look at the timings of those final pit stops, Ben Barnicoat, who's leading the race, his pit stop from in to out was 40 seconds. DKR Engineering, second place, Laurence Hoare, 41 seconds, and Dino Lunardi, 42. So super similar, but importantly for Barnicoat and Cool Racing, a second gained is one you put in your pocket.
Yeah, and I'm beginning to think, admittedly that bulletin was released very late in the day indeed, but mandatory pit stop it may well be. I think there's a 40-second time limit on that as well, though, as a minimum pit stop reference time, so it's not your 2 minutes 30, but you may well have to do 40 seconds irrespective of how much fuel needs to go in, and that's, I suppose, to make sure that you can't gain advantage through a mandatory pit stop which was enforced rather than being included in the race from a strategic point of view.
Well, Rinaldi Racing are not going to get on the top step of the podium with their 55 car, because that's in for its 3rd visit to the pits. Of course, they had a drive-through penalty. This was a car that got into the lead at the start of the race, but just slightly ahead before they crossed the start line. Drive-through penalty took it out from leading the race, and now, as it serves its 3rd stop, well, nothing's happening. Is that serving a penalty in the pit lane now? Why is that? Well, no one is working on the car at the moment, so can't quite get my head around that, but that will tumble out of the top 10. At the moment it's listed as 9th, with Alexander Matchell staying on board. Into the final 5 minutes of the race we go. Iron Lynx comfortably in front in the GT class by about 17 seconds over the chasing Paolo Roberti, the clock surely the friend of the number 8 Iron Lynx Ferrari. And up front, Ben Barnicoat leading for Cool Racing by 12 seconds, looking very good indeed. Doesn't need to take risks now.
Well, Rinaldi in their 55 car had already done their 2 stops, 3 actually stops to their... No, they haven't already done their 3 stops. That was their 3rd. The first was the drive-through when Karlovic jumped the start. So pit stop number 2 ticked off, and was the fuel not ready? Were the personnel not ready to launch into action? Because it's turned out to be 1 minute and 20 seconds when everybody else is doing 40-second stops for their second essential visit to the pit lane. I do like the fact that, again, masks, more or less essential, mandatory this weekend, but it's another excuse to roll out some team branding. And why not advertise your individual team? Cool Racing, looking Looking very cool indeed in the garage. Didn't start well this race. One of their cars is very badly damaged indeed. Nicola Molini will take some calming down. But what about the other side of the awning? With Ben Barnicoat in car 69 sharing that machine with Maurice Smith, who had a quiet but solid first stint, got the car into a decent position. And Ben Barnicoat's just been like a rocket ever since he took over.
Yeah, he really has. He's just been super fast, super consistent, and the laps are very much counting down nicely for him. It'd be this one and one further lap beyond his advantage, 12.6 seconds, but actually Lawrence Hurry's finally getting the number 3 DKR Engineering Duquesne to charge. He's just banged in the fastest first sector that anyone has managed. Gets the end of the lap. Well, he must have had a sector. Sorry, his was the middle sector that was so brilliant, but doesn't improve his lap time. So again, ebbing and flowing, but it's all just going the way of Ben Barnicoat at the moment. 12.6 seconds to the good in car number 69.
A little bit wide for Ben Barnicoat. Hope there's nothing up with the car there. Race leader. Very ragged exit. And is the car slowing out? It is slowing. Dramatic end to the race here. Ben Barnicoat, no pace at all. I wonder whether one of the Michelin tyres is going down. Big puff of smoke now from the right hand side. Cool Racing cannot believe this. An up and down race is going to end in a huge downer. 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock. He's barely going to reach the end of this lap. Ben Barnicoat has driven the wheels off it. He's driven the tyres off it. And that car is grinding to a halt, being covered by white flags at the end of the Mistral Straight.
Well, even if he can get it back to the pits in fairly fast order, by the time they put a new set of rubber on that car, he's going to drop down outside the top 10. Cool is cruel. That is so sad. So suddenly Lawrence Hoare is about to take the lead of the race. He's now just in front. He's gone past after that last sector. So slow on the Mistral Straight. How cruel is that for Ben Barnicoat? He put in a starring drive, but for Lawrence Hoare, that car was spun by Jean Gloria. There was a clash with Lawrence with the Ilex Sport Mercedes, and yet somehow they find themselves in the lead of this race. What a seesaw into the final win. He's got one more lap to go, but oh boy, for car 69.
Now the rear left wheel doesn't look too pretty there. I'm trying to work out whether all tyres are inflated. I think the tyre, if it's gone, is on the right hand side. It's tricky to tell from that particular shot whether all 4 Michelins were inflated, but all of a sudden the smoke arrived from the front right corner. We know the front left takes a pounding around here when you factor in turns like 3, 5 and 6, and then obviously the mighty scene where all the weight and the downforce is on the front left corner of these prototype cars. GT's more susceptible to a rear left going, but Michelin tyres in this championship have been very steady and highly durable across a race distance. Maybe just a miscalculation from Cool Racing in terms of how long the tyres would last, but could also have been just a little bit of debris picked up maybe by Ben Barnicoat. He certainly hasn't been hanging around. So the top 3 change again. Barnicoat's made it back to the pit lane. If they can turn that car around quickly, be able to get back out again in 4th, 5th. No, that's tumbling away now.
He'll be outside the top 10, I'm afraid, Johnny. Yeah. So really, really unfortunate for Cool Racing. For Lawrence Hoare, he's now got to... He can back it off. He's 26 seconds to good. Just trying to work out where exactly the... Oh, you can... looking to replay that tyres gone down into turn 3. Turn 3 into turn 4, going down the hill to the lowest part of the circuit. By the time he was trying to accelerate out of there to get onto the Mistral Straight, suddenly, why was he not pulling away from the 2 chasing Ferraris? Well, we know the answer now.
Yeah, there's hardly a worse place for a tyre to let go that early on in the lap, and as you say, not a quick process to get the car back to the pit lane. He's out in 6th position by the looks of things, Ben Barnicoat. Another car slowing. The 3 doesn't seem to have quite the pace that it did a lap ago at Garlaban. Or is that okay? Onto the brakes goes the race leader, and Lawrence Hoare. I think that was just slightly deceptive from the camera angle. I'm expecting anything to happen next in this race, but this is the final lap, and this is the final run out of turn 14. It can't go wrong from here for DKR Engineering. They carry on where they left off at the end of last season. They have 3 titles to their name, and it is a surprising victory for DKR Engineering. Almost muted applause down there. Not quite sure they felt they deserved that, but they'll take it. top amount of points to kick off their season. Congratulations to Jean Glorieux, who had a spin, remember, when he was being pressurised by Rory Penttinen towards the end of his stint, but Laurence Heur took the car over. Probably scared an awful lot of people down in DKR Engineering for that, with that exclamation from me. But all was fine, and the number 3 car now running deliberately off track to pick up as much debris as possible to make sure they pass the tests with the ride height post-race. Dino Lunardi across the line in second position, 21 seconds adrift. Third going to MV2S. What a welcome to the championship they have with a podium finish. Bruce Giovanni joined in the 27 by Christophe Cresp, who did the opening stint. And in the GT3s, these cars yet to finish their race, but Giacomo Piccini, highly experienced these days in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Might be a new co-driver for him, but Rino Mastronardi is certainly no weak link for the brand new team Iron Lynx. The Iron Lynx branding just beneath the driver's window there, and that fantastic looking paint scheme of the white and the black. It is victorious to match the checkered flag, the paint scheme on the car, and Iron Lynx take maximum points for the first race of the season. It'll be Kesselholm in second position, and Paolo Roberti, who gave up in the chase really late in the day. Had given it an awful lot though to see if he could match the pace of Piccini, but matching and catching are two very different things. Third position to Andrea Piccini, also from the Iron Lynx squad, and Ollie Hancock missing out on a podium by just over 9 seconds.
So if anybody looked at the qualifying sheet and saw Jean Glorieux and Laurence Heur starting on pole position, pick up the result sheet, saw they won the race. It wasn't that easy yet. They managed it, but it was a gift in the end. But you've got to be in front when the checkered flag comes down. The race is 2 hours long. If it was 1 hour and 58 minutes, victory would have gone to Cool Racing. One puncture took care of that, and they didn't. Ended up down in 6th place. What a race of change.
Certainly was very difficult indeed to stay on top of the twists and turns, but that's the way we like our motorsport, and you get set on a certain narrative and it'll switch. Safety car intervention required for a couple of cars heavily damaged, sadly, at turn 14. That really put the cat amongst the pigeons, and the scope to roll the dice from a strategic point of view. It was no longer kind of straight route from flagfall to flagfall, and teams could afford to make their longer pit stop earlier on, outside of the driver change window. Made even more complex because of the second pit stop that all the LMP3 cars needed to make as well. So an extra 40 seconds because of that in the pits, even more to their race time. And Laurence Heur will be grinning from ear to ear. Take a little bit of time for him to gather his thoughts and then clamber out of the car to celebrate at a suitable social distance, of course, from his DKR Engineering squad. Not taking too long at all for the young man to climb out. That seemed very unlikely, I'm sure, when Laurence took the car over and Jean Glorieux was fresh from his spin. But a hard afternoon's work is duly rewarded. Cutting of the highlights has been a real challenge as well. We might as well just roll the whole race. It started with a bit of fireworks because Daniel Kylevitz, too eager to get away and into a new season, judged to have jumped the start. He still led on the road into turns 1 and 2, but would later be penalised. 1 or 2 others not quite making the first couple of corners, and sadly for Nicola Molini, a real talent in qualifying earlier on in the day, but they couldn't get the car turned around from a setup point of view, and that was regulations outside of their control, so had to rejoin a lap down. There was a clash between John Schauerman and Steve Parrott. It wasn't as big as this one though, as Parrot rejoined. And interestingly, later on in the race, there was a message that the crew chief of 37 and Nicola Molini would be summoned to race control. That incident is still under investigation as far as I know. We'll find out news on that a little bit later on. Sadly, Nicky Leutwiler's race came to an early close. We wouldn't see his teammate Julian Anlauer as the Porsche had no power and it had to be wheeled to a safe location. We got back underway after a lengthy safety car period with 90 minutes left on the clock, and the battling continued straight away. Round the outside went Rory Penttinen to take third position away from Tony Wells and the Nielsen car. And scrapping also Maurice Smith. Now bear in mind that's the car that eventually came through to win outright with the, there were further dramas for the Graf car later on for the Cool Racing car. Huge dramas with that tyre going down. We'll get to see that in a moment. The DKR Engineering Jean Gloria car spinning at the end of the Mistral straight, and that really showed the pendulum was swinging away from Laurens Her, but the race had plenty more to give yet. Pit stops began aplenty, some of these outside of the regular window, but some within it too, and the driver changes taking place along with the long pit stop. Side by side glancing, we don't want to see at high speed between Eric Maurice and the eventual winner Laurens Her. So further evidence that thankfully that DKR engineering car wasn't too badly damaged. Look at the state of the tyre though that was taken off Eric Maurice's Mercedes. More pit stops happening, and this was high drama, and the bit that I'd forgotten about frankly, because it has only just happened, with the tyre going down on Ben Barnicoat's machine, front right letting go, and he would limp the car home in through the final few corners. Amazingly, Ben netting himself a top 6 finish after Cool Racing replaced that front right tyre at speed, and it would be left for Laurens Her to bring the DKR engineering car home out front. 21 seconds to the good, exactly 60 laps completed, and the GT3 honours slightly more easy to read as Giacomo Piccini and his Ferrari from Iron Lynx took victory by a little over 12 seconds, and it was Ferraris sweeping the podium. Perhaps that was an easy thing to predict after their performances earlier on in the weekend in free practice. And Porsche and Mercedes with a fair bit of work to do to match the speed of the prancing horses. Right, high time we caught up with no doubt jubilant Laurens Her, now chatting with Hayley Edmonds.
Yes, I'm joined here by Laurens Her, the winner of the LMP3 category of this Michelin Le Mans Cup. You started in pole, you finished the winner. How do you feel?
It feels really good. First race, first pole, first win. Really nice to be here. I think we were a bit lucky that the leader had a puncture, but that's racing, huh?
It is racing, absolutely. You did have a moment with the Mercedes from IDEC Sport, but you managed to kind of come out of it and pick up the pace once again.
Yeah, I think he just didn't see me in the mirror when I went for it. Maybe he didn't see the blue flags, I don't know, but anyway, the car was not damaged, so I just tried to pick up the pace again.
Well done, thank you very much, Laurens.
Well, muting his celebration, I think he's going to leap for joy out the back of the garage on the way to the podium in a moment or two. 60 laps done, as I say. DKR Engineering take victory for the first time this season from Motorsport 98 and MV2S Racing. Graf fourth, Müllner Motorsport with Moritz Krantz still at the wheel of the car by the end of the race, finishing in 5th place ahead of Ben Barnicoat. Now, let's turn the spotlight to the GT3 category. Iron Lynx pretty much all the way, and Giacomo Piccini brought the car home 20 seconds to the good.
I'm joined here by Giacomo Piccini from Iron Lynx team, winner in the GT3 category here at the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Winner, you got pole position and you finish race winner. How do you feel?
Amazing. I mean, it was really amazing. Reno did a fantastic first stint. He gave me the car with a good gap, and then I just had to manage. I have to say that the car was fantastic. I have really to thank all the team, all Aero Lynx, my brother Sergio, everyone, the mechanics, engineers. Everyone did an amazing job. It was hard for us to prepare over the winter, but thanks to a fantastic team, to Deborah, Claudio, we were able really to put together something impressive. So I'm really, really happy.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you. Thanks.
Yeah, there is a big grin behind that Iron Lynx mask, but worn for obvious reasons. That had to be strapped to the ears as soon as he clambers out of the car. Well protected inside that strong piece of metal, of course. The door mirrors don't off rattle around. Don't get that perspective at normal speed, but how violent some of the curbs are around here, and you can just tell how easy it is to pick up a puncture. Just ask Ben Barnicoat about that. Tricky to tell from this vantage point as to whether it was excessive abuse from the driver or whether it was a tyre that had already started to let go, maybe before it was strapped to the car, but it had lasted a great distance to that point, and you never quite know whether the tyres will do the distance. It's a warm day here as well, and a very grippy road surface, something for the ELMS teams to bear in mind throughout the course of the weekend. Sadly, 5 non-finishers. We know about Rinaldi Racing and Cool Racing, the Steve Parrow and Nicola Molini incident. Nicola Leutwiler's Porsche ground to a halt during the safety car. Michał Broniszewski was a weird one, just had no power coming out of the right-hander at 14. Couldn't quite tell whether it was a tyre going down or not, but the Ferrari just conked out well before turn 1. And Gary Houser's racing experience, Duquesne, didn't make the finish, but 20 other cars did, and the top 3 are about to be summoned to the podium here at Paul Ricard then. Winning cars make a great sight right in front of the podium, and obviously that will have to be done, again, adhering to the strict protocols that are in place. This race meeting being done in deliberately written COVID-19 regulations. So it'll be a podium that's slightly more spread out than normal, but the drivers should be just about safe enough to stand next to each other because they have been in the same bubble all weekend, all week, very probably. So to the third step of the podium, the MV2S gang, Bruce Giuani and Christoph Cresp. In fact, what we're going to do is just have the winners from the individual classes, and that's, again, from a safety perspective. So the Iron Lynx duo, I should say, of Giacomo Piccini and Rino Mastronardi. And to the left of shot are the DKR engineering winners of Laurence Roux and Jean Gloria. Team representative from both DKR and Iron Lynx as well. And the trophies held aloft. So great that we can do a podium, and I'm sure you'll appreciate that it needs to be done this way, purely from current protocol. We are going to have some champagne to be sprayed, which is only right on a very pleasant evening, Saturday night here at Paul Ricard. And what a great way to get the season underway, Bruce Jones.
Well, that's a race that's going to take an enormous amount of looking back and studying, but I think it's been an enthralling start to the 2020 season. I can't wait for the rest, Johnny.
No, I know. Lots of races still to come, 6 of them. A quick calculation, 2 to look forward to at Le Mans with the Road to Le Mans events. 2 lots of 55 minutes, but it'll be a 2-hour affair next time out at Spa-Francorchamps, and that will be the second weekend of August. 2 of these races to look forward to next month. My thanks to Hayley Edmonds for all her hard work down in pit lane, to Bruce Jones alongside me. Thanks for joining us for the duration of this Michelin Le Mans Cup. You won't want to miss the next one. From Johnny Palmer, it's bye-bye for now.